Chapter 483. When Li Hongyuan returned, the other brothers saw that his complexion didn't seem to have changed. They didn't know what was going on, but their hearts and lungs were scratching uncomfortably. Each and every one of them couldn't sit still, and wanted to return to the capital to see if things would develop as they expected. However, if the living king of hell didn't say to disperse, who could so easily pat their buttocks and leave? Even if Jin Qinhuang was currently in trouble, who could guarantee that he wouldn't be able to escape again? If by any chance he was still as lucky as before, at this time, throwing stones at someone who's down the well, wouldn't that be waiting for him to settle the accounts after autumn? As for whether it would offend Scholar Bai or not, the Bai family was reasonable and scrupulously abided by the rules. If they were offended, then they would be offended. Besides, there were so many people. What could the Bai family do? Could they just find trouble with some people? Right now, the hatred was all on Jin Qinhuang, so they didn't have the leisure to care about them. Therefore, they only needed to restrain their thoughts and quietly watch the show. Was this the so-called people who are kind will be bullied? At the beginning, that former cabinet elder of the Bai family didn't know that something had happened to his only grandson. After the corpses were carried back, the entire residence was in turmoil and chaos. Dark clouds hung overhead. The masters were mourning, the servants were grieving, as if that Bai Gongzi alone had brought death to the entire family. Don't talk about laughter, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Cabinet Elder Bai also finally knew about this matter. He didn't manage to catch his breath and almost lost his life. Again he called for the imperial physician, filled the prescription and so on. And this matter, as if it had grown wings, spread through the streets and alleys of the capital at the fastest speed. When Lu Qingdi found out about this matter, he was in the middle of reviewing memorials. On the spot, he threw his red brush and smashed the memorials. His temples were throbbing with pain. Where is that evil creature? Tell him to get his ass into the palace immediately. He couldn't stop roaring. The people inside the palace practically rolled and crawled out of the palace. Then, when they learned that Jin Qinhuang was still at the manor, how could they dare to be negligent? They quickly rode out of the palace on horseback, entered the manor, and entered the range of the horse farm. At that moment, they experienced the grief and indignation of the Baishir couple. However, this imperial eunuch did not dare to say a single word. Those thoughts were quickly thrown out of his mind. He did not dare to let the living king of hell come to see him, and could only find him himself. In the luxurious private room, he saw the leisurely Jin Qinhuang. That was even more leisurely than the other Wangya. His heart inexplicably shuddered. This servant greets the Wangya. Li Hongyuan didn't respond at all. The situation was a bit awkward. The others looked at each other, but they didn't say anything. Instead, they looked at Prince Kong. Their meaning couldn't be more obvious. He was the boss, so it was natural for him to speak up at this time. Prince Kong secretly cursed in his heart. A group of disgraceful things. How come he didn't see them being this modest? Who would have thought that he was the boss? Although he wasn't very smart, but at this moment, he also knew that whoever opened their mouth right now would likely be remembered by this bastard Li Hongyuan. However, he couldn't ignore it. They didn't have the same willful right as Li Hongyuan. Prince Kong suppressed his anger as much as possible and didn't vent his emotions. Dai Gonggong has come. I wonder what is the matter? This Dai Gonggong also wanted to scold people, asking when he already knew the answer. There really wasn't a good thing among the emperor's sons, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. Replying to Wang Ye, the emperor summons Jin Qinhuang Yi. Okay, the name was called, so the others also didn't mix in. However, the person who should cooperate still didn't cooperate, and looked at the field seriously. Interrupting and building bridges, Prince Kong also watched from the sidelines. Fu Huang's inner chamberlain wanted to report to Fu Huang, so he did what he needed to do. Naturally, the rest had nothing to do with him. The current day was a pleasant time, but that inner chamberlain Dai's forehead was faintly sweaty. If it was anyone else, these inner chamberlains would be very willing to run errands. Basically, they would be able to get a lot of rewards, except for Jin Qinhuang. Although sometimes Jin Qinhuang's rewards could be more than 10 or 100 other people's rewards added together, Jin Qinhuang's temperament was treacherous and unpredictable. No one dared to gamble on his good mood for the sake of those rewards. Therefore, this task was to be avoided if possible, and if they couldn't avoid it, they could only pray for their own good fortune. Dai Gonggong braced himself. Jin Qinhuang Yi, the emperor wants you to return to the capital as soon as possible and enter the palace. The living king of hell was completely entranced and didn't know anything else. Wang Ye, Jin Qinhuang Yi. What are you screaming for? Do you think Ben Wang is deaf? Li Hongyuan finally opened his mouth, and it sounded a little chilly. Dai Gonggong fell to his knees with a plop. Wang Ye, please forgive me, this servant. Okay, when the competition is over, Ben Wang will go see Fu Huang. You either shut up for Ben Wang, or immediately scram for Ben Wang. If he went back to report now without Jin Qinhuang, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would be attacked by the emperor. Because of his incompetence, he would be suppressed by the other colleagues, and stay behind to wait for Jin Qinhuang to return together. The emperor had gone to take care of Jin Qinhuang, and probably didn't have the leisure to come and ask him. But if he stayed behind, there was no small risk. After weighing the pros and cons, he still decided to stay and obediently shrink to the side to be the background, striving to not be noticed by Jin Qinhuang. And Dai Gonggong's words and deeds once again stimulated the other Qinhuang's hearts. Because the people close to Lu Qingdi were obviously the lowest existence, but the other people basically had to be courteous to some extent, including them, these powerful Qinhuang princes. They were respectful, but other than that, there was nothing else. On the contrary, if you offended them, perhaps they would put medicine in their eyes in front of Fu Huang. However, Li Hongyuan once again became an exception. They feared him. In front of him, they were like his grandchildren, lowering themselves into the mud. Perhaps they themselves didn't know, but to some extent, their fear of Li Hongyuan had already surpassed that of Fu Huang. It was as if Li Hongyuan was superior to them at all times, and in all aspects. They were both the emperor's sons, but with such a huge difference in treatment, no matter how hard they tried to persuade themselves, they still wouldn't be able to calm down. Because they were powerless to change anything now, they could only think about the future. However, some of them also understood that their fantasies about the future were just fantasies. In reality, they couldn't do anything and were nothing. After the second round, everyone originally thought that it would end, but unexpectedly, Li Hongyuan let them rest for half a sick hen before starting the third round. After that, they would rest again before starting the final round. For those who did not know, the impact was not big. In their view, Jin Qinhuang was not anxious, so why should they be anxious? Whatever happened, it would not fall on their heads. Thus, what should be done was done. Knowing that Lu Qingdi's men had come in batches, they hoped that Li Hongyuan would go even further and infuriate the emperor. On the other hand, they felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. When it was finally over, Li Hongyuan was willing to let them go. Everyone hurriedly rushed back to the capital, and it was almost time to close the city gates. Li Hongyuan was still leisurely. Beside him, Lu Qingdi had already sent a third wave of people. Yu Zhongqing personally came with an imperial edict. Lu Qingdi repeatedly asked Li Hongyuan to enter the palace, and even issued an imperial edict. This was an unprecedented matter. It was enough to see that the situation had already reached an extraordinary point. At this time, Jingwan had already sat beside Li Hongyuan. Why don't Wang Ye go back first? This concubine will tidy up and wait until the city gates open in the morning before going back? What's the hurry? When you're done tidying up, that's when we leave. The city gates will be closed and opened. It's not a big deal. Otherwise, we can wait together and go back tomorrow. Li Hongyuan said rather lazily. Jingwan pinched Li Hongyuan without a trace. Everything should stop before going too far. After all, that person was in power now. If he was completely angered, it would not be good for anyone. Wang Ye, don't talk nonsense. Let's go now. There's nothing to tidy up. This concubine will leave two people behind. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. So be it. Compared with the previous people who were in a hurry, Li Hongyuan's group still moved at a normal speed. No matter how anxious the people from the palace were, they did not dare to urge them. Of course, Yu Zhongqing, who had submitted to Li Hongyuan, was calm. He believed that Li Hongyuan could still get away this time. On the contrary, the Bai family, who was ready to fight against him to the end, would not have a good ending. Li Hongyuan wanted to go back to his mansion first to rest and drink tea. However, under the threat of Jingwan, he went to the palace first with Yu Zhongqing and the others. Li Hongyuan entered Emperor Lu Qingdi's imperial study. There were two people kneeling inside. There was no doubt that they were the former cabinet elder of the Bai family and his son, Secretary Bai. Speaking of which, according to the predetermined future, Secretary Bai would also be one of the cabinet elders in the future. Not to mention other things, the father and son were quite impressive. As far as Li Hongyuan knew, the former cabinet elder had just woken up and was trembling to enter the palace. His only son, Secretary Bai, accompanied him. The father and son had been kneeling in front of the emperor for more than 4 hours. Li Hongyuan wanted to admire the old man, but in fact, the former cabinet elder could not bear it. At this moment, he seemed to be dying. Obviously, such a state was extremely lethal to Emperor Lu Qingdi. This was his uncle, so naturally he was extremely distressed. He had been kneeling until now. No matter what he said before, Emperor Lu Qingdi did not agree. At this moment, he even agreed to what the father and son of the Bai family did not say. At least when Li Hongyuan came in, Emperor Lu Qingdi stood in front of his uncle and tried to help him up. Your Majesty, my poor grandson. He was not even 20 years old. He died so miserably. Tears streamed down his face. His voice was hoarse and he was on the verge of collapse. He was so pitiful. Uncle, please get up first. I will give you justice. Your Majesty. Li Hongyuan looked at him unmoved, as if he was watching a farce. When Emperor Lu Qingdi finally saw Li Hongyuan had been standing for a long time. Your son pays his respects to imperial father. Li Hongyuan bowed lightly. You vile spawn. Do you even put me in your eyes? Why aren't you kneeling down? Li Hongyuan lifted his eyelids. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He lifted his robe and knelt down. Seeing him like this, Emperor Lu Qingdi was so angry that he wanted to slap him to death. However, looking at his face, he could not bear to do it. He suppressed his anger and said, What do you want to say about today's matter? Li Hongyuan sneered. What do I want to say? The height of the precious beast garden's wall is high enough and very sturdy. Not to mention 1 or 2 tigers. Even if there were 100 of them, those beasts would not be able to escape unless someone deliberately let them out. Your son has no enmity with Madame Bai, and we rarely come into contact. It is clear that your son has been in the limelight recently. Someone wants to deal with your son. Madame Bai is just a pawn chosen by the other party. They chose him and not others. It's fine that Scholar Bai did not want to find out the truth when he arrived at the manor. Instead, he first showed his attitude to your son. Elder Bai is also ridiculous. He did not care about anything and first came to you to complain tearfully. Then he directly held on to your son and refused to let go. You want an explanation? Some things are already clear. You are delaying the investigation. So this prince wants to ask what Madame Bai means. What enmity does this prince have with them? Being attacked by Li Hongyuan like this, the 2 people from the Bai family were so angry that they trembled. They pointed at Li Hongyuan. You. Li Hongyuan directly stood up and flicked his sleeves. If you want to put a label on this prince, it's troublesome. Take out the evidence. Even if you want to fabricate evidence, it's troublesome to put on an act and investigate the matter. Without a reason, this prince will not admit it. Bastard. Lu Qingdi shouted angrily. Li Hongyuan looked straight at Lu Qingdi. Compared with his previous expressionless face, he was now cold. What I said just now was also for father. If father also thinks that it's all my fault, take out the evidence. Or father, for the sake of your relationship, you will listen to whatever they say and give them whatever they want. I, your son, can also be sacrificed without hesitation. Then father, you can just issue an edict to punish me. After all, you are the emperor and I am not even a subject. Wealth and life are just a few words from you. Anyway, some things have already happened for more than 20 years, and I don't care about it. After saying this, he directly flicked his sleeves and left. Lu Qingdi was stunned. He did not understand what his son meant. Thinking of a certain possibility, he could not help but take 2 steps back. He knew? Did he really know? But how could it be? How could it be? Li Hongyuan walked to the door and stopped. He turned back and looked at the two people of the Bai family. The whole capital city knows that if people respect me, I will return the favor. If you insist on not letting me go and don't want to find out the real culprit, I will definitely make your Bai family restless before I am stepped on. After that, he left quite decisively. The father and son of the Bai family were shocked. Lu Qingdi frowned. In fact, Lu Qingdi was very clear that no matter how much he gave his son, he still owed him. He owed him the right of succession from the beginning, and it was he who caused all this. His son had never wanted to fight for the throne. He was a little confused before. But if he knew about his special birth, wouldn't everything make sense? The more Lu Qingdi thought about it, the more he felt that it was so. However, except for himself, only Consort Su knew about it. The others were all dead. If Yuan knew, there was no doubt that it was Consort Su who told him. Lu Qingdi was burning with anger. That woman really had a lot of guts. The father and son of the Bai family saw that Lu Qingdi's expression was not right. They panicked. Your Majesty. Lu Qingdi looked at them. There was no more grief in his eyes, nor was there an attitude of absolute support for them. Uncle, go back and recuperate. I will work with the governor's office, the Ministry of Justice, and the Supreme Court to investigate and find out the real murderer. As the saying goes, the dead can't be brought back to life. Uncle, please restrain your grief. If you don't take care of your body like today, I will be heartbroken. These words seemed to be concerned, but the father and son of the Bai family understood that this clearly carried the meaning of warning. They used their affection to cry in front of him. It was also a kind of threat. Yes, in Lu Qingdi's eyes, it was a threat. Because he was the emperor. If he gave, you can take it. If he didn't give, you can't take the initiative to ask. The hearts of the father and son of the Bai family turned cold. Originally, the situation was good and was advantageous to their Bai family. But when Jin Qinhuang came, he only said a few words and completely overturned the situation. They were shocked by Jin Qinhuang's power, and also shocked by Jin Qinhuang's position in Lu Qingdi's heart. Your Majesty is like this, but this subject doesn't deserve it. This subject only wants justice. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/122076774. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, no registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, and Bicken.com. Chapter 484. Your Majesty, this is too much for this subject. This subject only wants justice, that's all. Well, I know. You can go back first. This time, the father and son did not dare to act shamelessly. No matter how they tried to persuade him, it was useless. Secretary Bai supported his father. In fact, after kneeling for such a long time, he was not much better than his father. He was trembling and could not stand up at all. After suffering so much but not achieving the expected result, how would he feel? Lu Qingdi looked at him and asked the eunuchs to help him up and send him back to the Bai family. After they left, Lu Qingdi said, "Summon the governor of the capital city, the minister of the Supreme Court, and the minister of the Ministry of Justice to the palace immediately." Lu Qingdi said. He sat back behind the plan and continued to read the memorials. However, in his current state, he could not read them. He threw the memorials aside. He was so irritable, depressed, and angry that the eunuchs wanted to find a hole to hide in. However, an eunuch came out and asked, "Your Majesty, it's very late. Do you want to call for dinner?" Because of the father and son of the Bai family, Lu Qingdi missed the dinner time. Obviously, he was not in the mood to eat before. Lu Qingdi rubbed between his eyebrows and said, "Call for dinner." He directly moved to the side hall and said, "When the 3 ministers come, bring them here directly." The eunuchs all breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Lu Qingdi did not vent his anger on them. Li Hongyuan walked out of the palace with a cold face. Along the way, One could feel the cold air whooshing from afar. No one dared to approach him because it was already dark. Sometimes, it was hard to notice. Therefore, even if they were walking towards him, they would all stop in their tracks and turn. If they really couldn't avoid him, they would quickly retreat a little, either standing or kneeling. They didn't dare to breathe too loudly and were unusually respectful. Li Hongyuan walked straight past them, completely ignoring them. It was better to be ignored. It was definitely 1,000 times better than being noticed. Li Hongyuan went out of the palace and boarded the carriage. His exposed emotions disappeared without a trace in an instant. However, since he didn't say anything, the carriage could still stay where it was, because the father and son left not long after him. Although it was slightly slower due to the inconvenience of movement, they were still carried out in a palanquin. When they learned that the carriage of Jin Qinhuangfu was still there, and had not left, the two people couldn't help but shiver. There was always an unpleasant feeling, always feeling that they had provoked someone who should not be provoked. When the two of them got off the palanquin, they happened to see Li Hongyuan's carriage with the curtains pulled open. Because there were no lights in the carriage, they couldn't see the situation inside. However, they felt that there was a pair of beast-like eyes inside, flashing in the darkness as if it was hunting, and the father and son were the prey it was staring at. His knees were already hurting to the bone, and now his legs were weak. If he wasn't supported, he might have fallen to the ground. She had long heard of Jin Qinhuang's illustrious reputation, and had also seen his methods of dealing with people on certain occasions. However, in the end, she hadn't come into contact with him, nor had she personally experienced his methods. Now there was a kind of terrifying feeling. Return to the Fu. Li Hongyuan's emotionless voice came from the carriage, and the coachman in front of the carriage immediately raised his whip. Looking at the carriage that was going further and further away, the father and son's hearts were filled with varying degrees of regret. However, after losing his only grandson's son, how could this person still have any rationality to speak of? When Li Hongyuan returned to Jin Qinhuangfu, Jingwan had already ordered people to prepare the meal. She didn't feel surprised that Li Hongyuan returned so quickly. In any case, this kind of thing, for her, was already used to it. Because she already had a plan in her heart, Jingwan wasn't worried. And Li Hongyuan's emotions were all for others to see. When facing Jingwan, he couldn't be bad and did what he should do. At the same time, the governor of the capital magistrate, the minister of the Supreme Court, and the minister of the Ministry of Justice had already arrived at the palace 3 days ago. Although they had already gone to the yamen, when the emperor summoned them, even if they were in a daze in the middle of the night, they still had to get up and enter the palace. What's more, after today's matter, they already had a plan in their hearts. Lu Qingdi let them eat together. Regardless of whether they ate or not, they all had to sit down and thank the emperor for his grace. Lu Qingdi was in a bad mood and hastily ate a bit. When he stopped, the other three also followed suit. Lu Qingdi wiped his mouth and threw away the handkerchief. Today's matter, you should already know. I'll give you 3 days' time. Zhen wants a satisfactory result. According to reason, the moment a person died, the capital magistrate should have taken over. However, Li Hongyuan didn't let anyone report the case. The Bai family took the body back and didn't want to report the case. Li Hongyuan investigated their own internal problems. The Bai family only wanted Lu Qingdi to uphold justice. They were too grieved and too angry. Perhaps, they had forgotten. Lu Qingdi only needed to say a few words, and the following 3 people had a headache. Because they didn't take over at the first moment, there would be a lot of gaps in the middle. For example, the people related to Jin Qinhuang's manor, and the people serving by Gongzi were all very important. And now, it was unknown whether these people were still alive or not. After all, if the master wanted to kill these people, it was just a matter of a few words. However, no matter how much Shili complained incessantly, his mouth could only agree. In fact, smart people knew that there were only 2 situations in this matter. First, it was a coincidence. The Bai family's boy was unlucky. Others were fine, but he died. Second, someone schemed against Jin Qinhuang. It was nothing more than borrowing the Bai family's hand to deal with Jin Qinhuang. If it was the former, the Bai family would definitely not let it go and bite Jin Qinhuang to death. This was not what the emperor wanted to see. If it was the latter, then who was the one who schemed against Jin Qinhuang? In fact, there was still a range. It wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to investigate. If those related people died, it would be even more difficult to investigate. And the final result was also not what the emperor wanted to see. And between these two, the possibility of the latter was far greater than the former. And even if it was the latter, if the investigation didn't lead to the cause, the Bai family would definitely bite Jin Qinhuang to death. More importantly, she had to satisfy the emperor. What was the most important thing to satisfy the emperor? To put it bluntly, this kind of thing shouldn't be investigated in the open. The emperor himself would determine the outcome. The capital governor and the minister of justice might have some concerns and didn't dare to go through some procedures. But the fifth Tai Ching of the Supreme Court was famous for being upright and plain-spoken when facing a case. He would investigate it as he should. Because of the special situation, Master Bai's funeral hadn't been held yet. The Bai family didn't even hang out the white banner. Naturally, no one would come to offer condolences. So it was certain that the body hadn't been buried yet. It was just tidied up and changed into decent clothes. From the outside, it didn't look that scary. In fact, the people who went to the manor with Master Bai were indeed beaten to death by the furious Madam Secretary, Bai, who couldn't find a way to vent her anger. Their relatives and friends were not allowed to collect the bodies. They were directly thrown into the mass grave and buried hastily. There was no value in itself, but the people and things related to them still had to be investigated. Fortunately, the people who belonged to Jin Qinhuang didn't die. On the contrary, the people who wanted to commit suicide didn't die. The suspicious points of Master Bai's body also had to be investigated. So an autopsy was necessary. People couldn't rest in peace even after death. How could the Bai family allow it? They cried to the heavens and fought to the earth. The others were in a dilemma, but the minister of the Supreme Court was determined. The people of the Bai family couldn't wait to eat him alive. Their eyes were filled with poison. The fifth Tai Ching didn't flinch. As long as I am still in this position, I have to do things according to the rules. Secretary Bai doesn't need to look at me like this. If you really don't like me, you can go to the emperor to complain. If the emperor dismisses me, I have nothing to do with it. In Jingwan's impression, the fifth Tai Ching was an amiable old man. He liked to stroke his beard. From time to time he would break a strand. He also liked flowers and plants. Occasionally, he would be like an old child. He would snatch things from his grandfather. He would quarrel until his face turned red. Even though she knew that he had a bad temper, that even Lu Chengdi had a headache in some aspects, she had never really seen it. However, when it really showed, people couldn't help but gasp in admiration. Secretary Bai was infuriated by the fifth Grand Eunuch, but he really could not be involved in this case. After all, the fifth Grand Eunuch was investigating the case according to the normal procedure. He was in the right no matter what. If he was involved in this case, Secretary Bai would be regarded as taking advantage of his relationship with Emperor Lu Chengdi. At that time, not only Secretary Bai would be criticized, but even Emperor Lu Chengdi would be criticized by all kinds of ministers. It would be strange if Emperor Lu Chengdi was happy at that time. Secretary Bai clenched his back teeth. He could only be isolated and watch the coroner make trouble on his dead son. His wife cried and threw a tantrum. She had already lost her image. She cursed the fifth Tai Ching to die a horrible death, and to have no descendants. The fifth Tai Ching looked coldly with a straight face. He was extraordinarily serious. Speaking of which, the fifth Tai Ching was well-mannered. If it were someone else, he might have directly retorted, "The Bai family is the one who will have no descendants. Look, even your only son is dead. Could it be that you have done too many evil things to end up like this?" It should be noted that the fifth Tai Ching had many children and grandchildren. His family was harmonious, and many of them were successful. In the end, it was the wife of Secretary Bai who fainted from crying. It had to be said that the coroner was quite capable. According to some of the characteristics of the corpse, it could almost be concluded that the deceased had taken some kind of medicine before his death, and the effect of the medicine was probably to replace the organs. According to this clue, they continued to investigate. They really found a servant of the deceased. However, the servant was dead, and the clue was completely broken. If the servant had not been beaten to death by the order of the wife of Secretary Bai, they would have suspected that the wife of Secretary Bai had something to do with the servant. She killed the servant to silence him. Knowing that her recklessness had broken an important clue, the wife of Secretary Bai fainted again. However, when she woke up, she refused to admit her mistake. She did not take good care of her son, and caused his death. Didn't such a servant deserve to die? In fact, as expected at the beginning, there was no result at all. Everything pointed to the fact that someone had planned all this. However, every clue, whether it was the people of the Bai family or the people of Li Hongyuan's farm, was broken at some point and could not be investigated further. It was like a thread that was divided into several parts and then cut off together. Since there was no clue, no matter how angry Lu Qingdi was, the result would be the same. Even though the Bai family was rational and thought that they shouldn't completely vent their anger on Jin Qinhuang, but once they thought that their precious flesh and only seedling was gone, how could they still be rational? Even if they wanted to be rational, other people were either wailing, pointing and gossiping, or rejoicing in other people's misfortune, constantly reminding them, washing away their rationality. When this person's grief and indignation reached a certain degree, they would always involuntarily find a way to vent. The former court elder of the Bai family went to the palace every day. His body was obviously getting worse, and it looked like he would die at any time on the way, but he still did not stop. Lu Qingdi was having a headache. After all, this was his uncle who had helped him a lot. Besides, if he put himself in his uncle's shoes, he could not say anything harsh. However, it was absolutely impossible to put all the blame on his son. Master Bai's body could not just be left there. It had to be buried. Therefore, the Bai family finally hung up the white banner and did the ritual. Other people also came to offer their condolences one after another, especially the in-laws of those grandaunts who had married out. Those grandaunts came back as soon as they knew about the matter. Until now, a few days later, they helped to take care of all kinds of things. They wanted to comfort them and let them restrain their grief. However, the sorrow of a white-haired person sending off a black-haired person was not something that could be eliminated with a simple sentence. Looking at the miserable appearance of the family, people couldn't help but sigh. The Bai family did not have a son before. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, they were often laughed at. And as the wife of Master Bai, even if she gave birth to 4 daughters, she was also called a hen that could not lay eggs. She was scolded and disliked. That kind of grievance, that kind of bitterness, it lasted until the 5th pregnancy when she gave birth to a son. In fact, she was not young anymore. In order to give birth to a son, her husband had long stopped sleeping with her. That child was also calculated by her. When it was born, it was a son. Her position was stable and all the mistakes in the past were as if nothing had happened. That son was old Madame Bai's life. Without a son, it could be said that there was no hope left. Recently she was going crazy. And this matter, she didn't know how, but it was related to Jingwan again. It seemed that in just one night, all the mistakes were her. Building the horse ranch was her idea. Building a luxurious animal garden was her idea. It was all because of her that Jin Qinhuang became more and more extravagant. If it wasn't for her messy ideas, how could someone die and so on? Jingwan felt her knees hurt. It was simply lying down and getting shot. However, it was not enough to just talk about it. The old madam of the Bai family actually wanted Jingwan to wear mourning clothes for her son and kneel until her son was buried. If Jingwan didn't care about it before, her face would have turned completely cold now. Originally, the Luo family didn't intervene in this matter. However, the Bai family's actions completely angered the Luo family. Luo Peishan directly tore into Scholar Bai in the court. Of course, he didn't do anything to Scholar Bai directly. He was the Minister of Personnel Affairs and was in charge of the officials. As long as the officials were related to the Bai family, especially those sons-in-law of his, he would pull them all out and mercilessly scrutinize them from head to toe. People in the officialdom simply couldn't withstand being scrutinized to death. There was always a bit of a problem with their morality. At this moment, all of them were pulled out by Luo Peishan. There was a problem here. If they didn't pass the assessment, they were not allowed to be promoted. Luo Peishan also didn't use any underhanded tricks. This official is not like some people who like to fabricate nonsense and create something out of nothing. This official has always paid attention to the facts. Scholar Bai said that this official was talking nonsense, but this official can't agree. You must know that these matters are not handled by this official alone. There are so many people in the Ministry of Personnel Affairs, and they are all clear about it. Originally, there's no need to report to the emperor about the transfer of officials below the 4th rank. Now that I've brought it out, it's easier for everyone to understand. Although it wasn't an underhanded trick, it was more infuriating to go against the Bai family openly. The Bai family had the emperor as their backer, and they knew how to conduct themselves. There were many colleagues who were on good terms with them. However, at this moment no one stood out. Firstly, if they angered Luo Peishan, they might become the next Bai family. Secondly, if the Bai family vacated their positions, there would be more opportunities for others. Friendship was friendship, but when it came to their own interests, friendship was nothing. Scholar Bai was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Luo Peishan's smile didn't change, but his eyes were cold. In such a situation, Lu Qingdi chose to be a bystander and didn't say a word. Of course, the Luo family wasn't the only ones who were really angered. The real evil fire in the living hell's heart was accumulated. Once it exploded, it would definitely burn people to death. However, the living hell didn't take any action for the time being. Many people related to the Bai family were in trouble, so old Madame Bai didn't dare to keep pestering Jingwan. However, that didn't mean that the Bai family would stop causing trouble. The former cabinet elder ran to the emperor and requested that the 81 altars built today be used for his grandson's ritual. Lu Qingdi immediately flew into a rage. If it weren't for the fact that this was his uncle, if it weren't for the fact that he was old and couldn't even stand steadily, Lu Qingdi would have smashed the inkstone directly on his head. Lu Qingdi still longed to see the imperial noble consort, and asked her to come out to perform the ritual for his nephew? How could a kid like him deserve such honor? Uncle, go back. I'll pretend that I don't know about it. This time, the former Grand Secretary had steeled his heart. Your Majesty, the imperial noble consort is just a nameless orphan girl of unknown origins. You supported her and made her the imperial noble consort, giving her the supreme honor. But to say that she's some fairy of the 9th heaven, it's fine if you just coax the ignorant people, but do you really believe it? Think about how much the Empress Dowager did for you. How much she sacrificed and how much she sacrificed. Do you really have the heart to see her family die out? Lu Qingdi's face was livid. Of course, he remembered some things in his heart. This was the reason why he had always been kind to the Bai family. But it didn't mean that he was willing to be mentioned in public. Uncle, you've gone too far. My uncle is very good. He has many children and grandchildren. How can the Bai family die out? The Bai family had always been reasonable and sensible. But now they suddenly exposed it, which made Lu Qingdi very angry. He suspected that they had been pretending before. Your Majesty, my poor grandson. If he can't reincarnate, his experience will only be the beginning of the Bai family. Do you really have the heart to? Enough! Lu Qingdi shouted angrily, interrupting him. Your Majesty, my grandson died unjustly. He died with his eyes wide open, and his resentment can't be dispelled. You promised to uphold justice for him, but you didn't say anything. You even gave him a religious ceremony, and he wasn't willing to be reincarnated. Your Majesty, the Bai clan is gone, and this old thing doesn't have the face to continue living in this world. Everyone in the Bai clan is ashamed to face their ancestors. It's better for them to die so that they can go down and beg for forgiveness. The former cabinet elder seemed to have lost his mind. Whatever he should say and what he shouldn't say, he screamed it out. To put it bluntly, his goal was still Li Hongyuan. He wanted Li Hongyuan, the murderer, to pay the price and resolve his grandson's grievances. He was also certain that Lu Qingdi wouldn't give up the altar. This was not only a threat of death, but also the death of everyone in the Bai family. Lu Qingdi's face was gloomy. He didn't know what happened to make his uncle act like a different person. Even if he got what he wanted, would the Bai family have a good life in the future? However, if this continued, Lu Qingdi's image in the public would be affected. When Li Hongyuan heard the news, he knew that it was about time. Is it necessary for the Bai family to do this? Jingwan was confused. The Bai family's only child is gone. This means that the previous plan is useless. It is not wise to destroy the friendship between the Bai family and my father. But what if someone made a promise to the Bai family? How long can my father stay on the throne? How long can the Bai family exist? Even if the Bai family is hated by my father, as long as the Bai family is still alive, there is a possibility for the Bai family to rise again. If the Bai family removes a big rock like me for the person who made the promise, the Bai family will be a meritorious official. Hearing this, Jingwan also understood. Is Yuan going to do it? https://www.bikin.com/11/11807/1235946. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bikin.com mobile edition website, mbikin.com. Chapter 485. Naturally, we have to resolve this matter before Fu Huang makes his decision. It's time to teach some people what it means to draw water with a bamboo basket. Muan, get ready to go to Bai Fu. Li Hongyuan got up, brushed his robe, and looked at Jingwan. It should be a good show. Wan, do you want to go and take a look? Weren't you curious about what this husband was going to do from the start? Just watch the scene. You don't have to listen to other people's retelling. Jingwan thought about it. Gossiping about this kind of thing, it was indeed more interesting to be the first to watch the scene. Moreover, Bai family had dragged her into the water before. If there was a chance to take revenge, it seemed that there was no need to be polite. As for why it was gossiping, Jingwan thought so anyway. Thus, okay, let's go together. Li Hongyuan's clothes were barely passable. He was wearing the usual black brocade robe with auspicious clouds. Jingwan's clothes were more excessive. Although it wasn't bright red, the color was more colorful. It was definitely not suitable for mourning. Although they were going to watch the show, but in the end, the deceased was the most important. Wouldn't it be inappropriate? Jingwan's clothes were chosen by Gong Mama, who was usually the most upright and wouldn't make mistakes easily. When Jingwan raised her doubts, Li Hongyuan also said that there was no problem. Thus, Jingwan didn't have to worry so much. However, could she suspect that there was also a problem with that by Gongzi? The so-called taking the firewood from under the cauldron was actually referring to Bai Gongzi himself? At this moment, she was too lazy to think about it. In any case, the mystery would be revealed soon. It could be imagined that when Jin Qinhuang Fu's guards of honor majestically appeared in front of the Bai family's gate, and then saw Jingwan's clothes, the Bai family's expression would be as if they had swallowed a fly. It was as ugly as it could be. However, Li Hongyuan was still a prince, so they didn't dare to say anything. However, some people thought maliciously, go ahead and be arrogant. Let's see how long you can be arrogant. Without your respected status, even if the emperor wants to protect you, you will be ridiculed and ridiculed. Maybe now is your last chance to show off. Li Hongyuan randomly summoned a member of the Bai family and brought them to the mourning hall. With the deterrence of the living king of hell, no one dared to confront him head-on, even if they were at the end of their rope. The servant of the Bai family who was called out immediately trembled in fear. In the mourning hall, the only proper master of the Bai family was old Madame Bai. The rest were her daughter and son-in-law, as well as a few of the more respectable concubines of the Bai family. Seeing Li Hongyuan and Jingwan, old Madame Bai, who was like a walking corpse, instantly turned into a ferocious ghost. Her face was abnormally ferocious. If it weren't for her daughter stopping her, she might have pounced on them to kill them. The Bai family's land is lowly and can't bear the trampling of Jin Qinhuang and Wang Fei. Indeed, Li Hongyuan bluntly replied. As the saying goes, even a clay figurine has 3 points of anger. The living king of hell was so hateful. The eldest daughter of the Bai family stood up, her face solemn, but she didn't lose her etiquette. She squatted down. Wang Ye and Wang Fei's status is honorable and naturally is not something lowly people like us can reach. However, since Wang Ye and Wang Fei are here today, please give this younger brother a bit of respect and a bit of peace. Wang Ye is from the imperial family and should be the role model of the world. Wang Fei is from a scholarly family. Who wouldn't praise the Luo family for their good upbringing? Everyone understood the meaning behind her words. Perhaps they should praise her for her courage? Jingwan's gaze paused on this woman. Regardless of other aspects, the Bai family's upbringing of their children was impeccable. No matter if it was the person in front of her or the one lying in the coffin. The pampered and pampered only child didn't become a dandy. It was enough to show that they had put in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, a good hand of cards was ruined. Or rather, they met the living king of hell. They didn't stand on the same side as the living king of hell. So this good hand of cards was scattered by the living king of hell. Li Hongyuan's gaze lightly swept over. If people respect Ben Wang will return them with a foot. The Bai family has repeatedly bullied Ben Wang. What? Do you expect Ben Wang to repay evil with kindness? What position do you have to dare to speak to Ben Wang like this? As a married woman, you should also consider your husband's family. The woman's face instantly paled. Her husband clearly had hope of being promoted this year. Because of the Minister of Personnel Affairs, he didn't have any hope. It looked like he was going to be sent out. If the place where he was sent out became that barren and barren land, wouldn't she be blamed to death by her husband's family? She was inwardly annoyed at herself for not being able to control herself. Her husband pulled her from behind, asking Wang Yi for forgiveness. It was this official who didn't discipline him well. Another day, this official will definitely come to apologize. He didn't want his current situation to be even worse. Even now, Wang Yi is still as elegant as before. This old man really admires you. A slightly trembling old voice sounded. Bai family's minister Qian was supported by Scholar Bai. Behind him, there were also many distinguished guests. Hearing that Jin Qinhuang had arrived, these people couldn't wait to come and watch a good show. Men and women alike. However, seeing that the emperor seemed to have already compromised and only lacked an imperial edict, Jin Qinhuang was still so calm and composed. Could it be that he still had some tricks up his sleeve? However, regardless of whether there were any, it was best not to provoke Jin Qinhuang. Go light a stick of incense for Wang Yi and Wang Fei. Minister Qian walked closer and said to his son. Scholar Bai naturally obeyed. He personally lit 2 sticks of incense and personally offered it. His eyes were dark and heavy. Wang Yi, please. Let my grandson rest in peace for a stick of incense. As for the emperor, perhaps this old man can also say a few words of comfort. Li Hongyuan glanced at the incense in front of him and suddenly smiled. If it really is the seed of the Bai family, Ben Wang's incense is also fine. But it's just a lowly seed. Is it worthy? When Li Hongyuan's words came out, it shocked everyone. Li Hongyuan, you dare to fabricate this kind of thing. This old man will not rest until you die. Even though he was old, at this time, he was also like a lion on the verge of death who wanted to fight for his life. Li Hongyuan didn't care. His eyes fell on old Madame Bai and he smiled carelessly. Fabricate? Whether it's fabricate or not, you might as well ask this Bai family's mistress. In the coffin, is it Scholar Bai's seed? Or is it a lowly seed that she seduced and stole in order to consolidate her status? Everyone's eyes uniformly fell on old Madame Bai. Her face was deathly pale. Her eyes were filled with fear and her whole body was trembling. It was obvious that the fear was more than the anger. Looking at this reaction, could it be that Jin Qinhuang was right? The bad premonition in Minister Qian and Scholar Bai's heart expanded to infinity. The secret that had been kept for more than 10 years had always been well hidden. The people who knew about this matter couldn't guarantee that they would keep their mouths shut, and had been dealt with cleanly. As time went by, old Madame Bai herself had forgotten this matter. Her son was the Bai family's seed and she gradually lost her vigilance. Now that it was suddenly exposed, she was caught off guard and she wasn't someone who had undergone strict training. Her first reaction was to reveal her true emotions, and she couldn't react for a long time. Scholar Bai, who was still holding the incense, only felt that his eyes were going black. If he had forced Jin Qinhuang to lower his head just now, his heart would still be a little complacent. But now he felt that he was a big joke. The incense in his hand was crushed and his whole body was trembling. He took a big stride towards his originally dignified and virtuous wife and slapped her. Slut, 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 he roared hysterically. Old Madame Bai was directly knocked to the ground by this slap. She seemed to have finally regained her senses. Lao Yi, it's not, Jin Qinhuang is spouting venomous slander. You have to believe me. She climbed up and wanted to pull Scholar Bai's clothes. Scholar Bai was already mad with anger. He kicked the woman on the ground with all his might. Speaking of which, old Madame Bai was already a person who was almost 60 years old. How could she withstand this kind of punches and kicks? However, no one dared to step forward to stop him. The servants who served her were trembling uncontrollably. Her daughter was also completely scared silly. Elder Bai Qian tightly grasped the walking stick in his hand and clenched his teeth to support himself. Compared to his son, he was not much better. In any case, he still had a little bit of rationality left. But it was already too late to stop it. It was impossible to gloss over it by deceiving himself. His whole life's clean reputation was ruined just like this, completely ruined. Enough! Elder Bai Qian opened his mouth in a trembling voice. But it was clear that his son did not hear him at all. He trembled as he stepped forward, unable to lift his feet. He was practically rubbing the ground as he walked. He barely managed to raise his walking stick and hit over. Disgraceful thing. Scholar Bai finally stopped and looked at Elder Bai Qian. Father. His anger reached the extreme, and also his grief reached the extreme. Then tears flowed down his old face. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and he seemed to be asking why. Father. Old Madame Bai could be said to be unusually miserable now. She crawled up and wanted to grab the hem of her father-in-law's clothes. Listen to your daughter-in-law, it's really not. Elder Bai Qian directly swung his walking stick and hit her head. Fortunately, he did not use enough strength. Otherwise, just this hit alone might have taken her life. Then he pointed at the coffin. Open it, strip him and throw him into the mass grave. Send someone to guard it. If the wild dogs haven't eaten him clean, he's not allowed to come back. Just a moment ago, he was enjoying all the glory, and was about to be buried in the Bai family's ancestral grave, and enjoy the Bai family's incense. In the blink of an eye, he was left with nothing. Even his bones were about to be devoured by the wild dogs. Old Madame Bai did not try to stop her. She simply tried to explain herself time and time again. However, this also confirmed that her son was not a part of the Bai family. If he was, and if she was innocent, why wouldn't she want to protect him? Speaking of which, when old Madame Bai's mother-in-law was still alive, she did not have a son. Her status in the Bai family was precarious. She was suppressed by one concubine after another, until she could not even raise her head. She did not expect that in her 40s, she would give birth to a son and immediately turn the tables. She could hold her head high, and even forget about the past. She raised the concubine's daughter and the other concubines well. Everyone said that she had a good life, and was virtuous. She was known as a model woman. However, the reality was that she had an affair and gave birth to a bastard. Thinking about it now, how was she virtuous and magnanimous? She was clearly guilty. Those who envied her and praised her in the past, especially those who were close to her, only felt equally embarrassed now. They were too ashamed to show their faces. They hated her to death, and were also disgusted to death. When that bastard was born, he looked strong and chubby. No matter how I looked at him, he didn't look like he was born prematurely at 7 months. Now that I think about it, what prematurely? He was probably full term. When that bastard was still in the womb, and after he was born, the Bai family used all kinds of reasons to deal with many people. They even treated him as their precious son, and could not tolerate the slightest bit of carelessness. I'm afraid they used the excuse of dealing with those who knew about it, and sold them. I'm afraid they have already become a pile of dirt. I still thought that she was a good person. I didn't expect her to be such a person. She's dirty and rotten on the inside. Her methods of deceiving people outside are also first class. Secretary Bai was cuckolded by the person beside him, and he did not even realize it. He treated that bastard like a precious pearl in the palm of his hand for more than 10 years. He looked like such a smart person, but it turns out that he is also a stupid person. Maybe he sensed something, but he got carried away by the fact that he finally got a son. Even if there were some suspicious points, he ignored them. He must have gone crazy thinking about his son. Such words were whispered by the onlookers. The Bai family wished they could find a hole to hide in. It was too shameful. Old Madame Bai wanted to explain, but at the same time, she said that they were talking nonsense. In the end, she could not take it anymore. Her eyes rolled up and she fainted. At this moment, it was indeed better for her to be unconscious than to be awake. Jingwan looked at it coldly. She did not expect that the problem really came from Master Bai. It was really a drastic measure. Since Master Bai was not the son of the Bai family, the Bai family had no reason to force the emperor to punish her husband. Even if Master Bai's father had some status, he was still an illegitimate son. His death was not a big deal. Besides, according to what someone said just now, old Madame Bai must have seduced a servant to give birth to Master Bai. That meant that Master Bai was a slave. After all, even if the king of hell threw a slave to feed a tiger, he would only be criticized for being cruel. Emperor Lu Qingdi would only scold him and punish him. There would be no real punishment. This was the cruel reality brought about by the difference in status. However, in this way, there was no meaning in investigating the real culprit behind the scenes. Even if the culprit was dealing with Jin Qinhuang, however, wasn't Jin Qinhuang fine? In fact, everyone knew in their hearts who was the culprit. It was none other than those few people. Lu Qingdi himself also pretended to be deaf and mute, not wanting to face reality. Didn't you see that the joint efforts of the capital government, the Supreme Court, and the Ministry of Justice did not find anything? Lu Qingdi also did not say anything. No result was the result that he wanted. Jingwan had no sympathy for old Madame Bai. Under the harsh and cruel background, since she did such a thing, she must be aware that she would pay a heavy price if she was exposed. But Master Bai, the Bai family was too heartless. After all, he was held in the palm of their hands for more than 10 years. He did not know anything. What was wrong with that? Moreover, he was already dead. Why was there a need to torture him like this? From this point of view, Master Bai's death was fortunate. If he was alive, who knew what he would face? However, if he was alive, this matter might not be exposed. Therefore, there were some things that were hard to say. Shut up. Elder Bai Qian finally could not help but shout. Everyone was startled at first, but soon after, they unconcernedly curled their lips. It was already like this. What prestige did they still have to show off? Forcing the emperor and being remembered by the emperor, they shouldn't think that the emperor could punish Jin Qinhuang now. As long as the living king of hell didn't fall, they had offended him like that before. In the future, who would care about the Bai family? Who would dare to help the Bai family? Wang Yi must have planned all of this. Are you very proud that the Bai family has fallen to this state? How can your mind be so vicious? Since you already knew, why didn't you say it in private? If you said it, everything would be resolved. The Bai family's scandal would not be known by everyone. In any case, I am your granduncle. Li Hongyuan sneered. Don't claim to be related to Ben Wang. This matter originally had nothing to do with Ben Wang. It was you who insisted on not letting go of Ben Wang, and wanted to trample Ben Wang into the mud. What you did the first time, but Ben Wang is not allowed to do the same. In your eyes, when did Ben Wang become a person who repays evil with good? On the day of the incident, Ben Wang said, if your Bai family insists on making things difficult for Ben Wang, then Ben Wang will definitely make your Bai family's chickens and dogs restless before being trampled. It's just that you didn't take Ben Wang's words seriously at all. If your attitude was better before, this matter would definitely be discussed with you in private. After all, Ben Wang has no interest in revealing other people's scandals. For so many years, Ben Wang has also kept his mouth shut. In any case, you are Ben Wang's granduncle. The same words were returned to Elder Bai Qian. How ironic. The dried orange peel on Elder Bai Qian's face twitched. He really had nothing to say. The King of Hell's conduct was known to all. Occasionally, even if you didn't provoke him, he could cause some trouble. Provoking him, He had never seen anyone who was able to get away without any trouble. Probably, from the moment his son went to his country residence, his tone was not good and his attitude was not good. Today's matter was already destined. Now it was too late to say anything. The Bai family's reputation was instantly ruined. This old man only wants to know one thing. How did Prince know about this matter? That's right, this was also what other people wanted to know. Others didn't know, but why did he know? This is purely a coincidence from more than 10 years ago. Ben Wang snuck out of the palace and happened to meet someone who escaped death. I didn't want to kill him, so I spared his life. Speaking of which, that person was also stupid. At first, he escaped death, but he didn't run far away. After going around in circles, he wanted to come back to see his son. He was so unlucky that he was discovered by his son's mother, who had already taken control of the Bai family's inner residence. He almost died again, but he was also lucky to have met Ben Wang. Can you blame him for not killing him? He said it himself, he was still young. In fact, Li Hongyuan already knew about it in his previous life. He knew about it from Master Bai. At that time, it was also a bad debt. It couldn't be explained in a few sentences. After Li Hongyuan was reborn, he naturally had to hold on to the things that could be held in his hands tightly. Thus, he calculated that it was about time. So he used his limited manpower and waited around the Bai family for a long time to protect old Madame Bai's adulterer. This kind of information could be used against him in the future. In fact, there were some things that could be done in preparation. However, in Li Hongyuan's previous life, when he died, this only son of the Bai family was still alive and well. Speaking of which, your Bai family's style of doing things is really unchanging. Regarding the death of that bastard child, you didn't ask about the right or wrong. Based on your mood, you first put a hat on Ben Wang. Now this matter concerns the innocence of the Bai family's mistress. Similarly, you didn't investigate carefully, and decided to convict her based on your own judgment. However, there is no second mistake. Since Li Hongyuan had already said it, what else could he say? There was no point in investigating now, since it had already been determined. Even if he explained it to the outside world, no one would believe him. They would only think that it was for the sake of face that they even admitted to the bastard child. Moreover, previously he didn't think that it was Jin Qinhuang's fault. He just took it out on him and didn't let it go. It was for the sake of the Bai family's future. In the end, it was all for naught and the Bai family was completely lost. Now, based on his judgment, this matter couldn't be faked. If he couldn't stop it in the first place, then there was no need to do anything later. This old man wishes to ask Wang Ye for a matter. Can you hand over that adulterer to this old man? For the person who humiliated the entire Bai family, he must not let him live in this world. Compared to his previous attitude, it was definitely a difference of heaven and earth. Even now his heart still hated Li Hongyuan. However, how could his only grandson be compared to a bastard child born from an adulterous affair between a servant and the mistress of the Bai family? For the former, you might be able to get justice for your entire family. For the latter, you might even have to thank the other party for killing the shame of the Bai family. For the former, you might even be able to threaten the emperor. For the latter, the emperor could slap you to death with a flip of his hand. You want the person, sure. What do you want to exchange with Ben Wang? What do you want to exchange? Jin Qinhuang could say that he didn't lack anything. The only thing he lacked was probably power. This thing wasn't something he could give. So how about surreptitiously submitting? But it also depended on whether the other person agreed or not. Li Hongyuan sneered. Ben Wang will take his leave. Turning around, he flicked his sleeves and directly left. Jingwan, who hadn't said a word from the beginning, also leisurely left. Speaking of which, she really was purely watching the play. When the husband and wife left, the others also took their leave one after another. Burning incense with an adulterous child, they also felt particularly unhappy. However, now that the Bai family had become like this, they also couldn't look for trouble. None of Scholar Bai's sons-in-law stayed behind. Their wives wanted to go with them, but they were helpless. You don't need to go back. Our family can't accommodate you, this great Buddha. The letter of divorce and your dowry will be sent over later. This was the general treatment for the married daughters of the Bai family. Having that kind of mother-in-law, they lost all face. It was one thing to be worried about the daughter that she raised, but they were worried that if they kept the daughter of the Bai family, their own family would be pointed at and gossiped about. Although they had expected such a situation to happen, when it really happened, they still couldn't accept it. For a moment, they cried and wailed, begging in every possible way. If they were divorced and returned home with such a reason, how could they live? Those who scrupulously abide by their duties in the husband's family were a little better. For those who relied on the support of their family and acted like a tyrant in the husband's family, their husbands were not polite at all. They even punched and kicked. Their sisters-in-law and sisters-in-law were also angered. Before they left, they fiercely spat. However, old Madame Bai's eldest daughter stood in the same place, looking at her husband with hope. When he finally turned around and left, she stood in the same place in a daze. She wanted to cry but had no tears. It was conceivable that the unmarried daughters of the Bai family were not much better. For those who were still young, it was still okay. After a long time, the Bai family changed the head of the family, and the impact would be small. However, for those who were about to be married, their lives were really ruined. They hugged their birth mothers and cried bitterly. For a moment, the cries of the Bai family were even more earth-shattering than when they cried for Master Bai. It was also very real. There was no situation where there was only thunder and no rain. In the carriage, Jingwan was not in a good mood. Li Hongyuan knew why. Wan, do you blame your husband for being ruthless? Why would I? They attacked you first. Now they want to strip you of your title. In fact, they want your life. So, how can you not fight back? As a daughter of the Bai family, we are bound together for good or ill. You enjoy the glory brought by the Bai family, so naturally, you have to bear the consequences brought by the Bai family. In this society that paid attention to family and family ties, everyone was the same. No one could escape from this circle. However, this matter is still too tragic for them. After all, they didn't do anything wrong in this matter, but they have to bear the consequences. It's just a pity. Wan, have you ever thought that they might hate your husband? Since you are one with me, you will not be left out. This is a very normal thing. So, this is how it is. In fact, in other people's eyes, this matter was not so bad in Jingwan's eyes. In the future, it might not be a miserable life. It all depended on what they thought and what they did. Jingwan always believed that a lot of things depended on her own attitude. Li Hongyuan held her in his arms. Don't worry. You can change it yourself in the future if you have the chance. Jingwan laughed. How easy it was to say. However, no matter how difficult it was, someone had to do it. If she really sat in that position and had the support of his power, Jingwan felt that she could not be indifferent. What are we going to do next? Jingwan asked, twirling a strand of Li Hongyuan's hair. Because of father's attitude, your husband is sad. Naturally, the next step is to heal. Jingwan silently lit a candle for Lu Qingdi. However, such a father deserved to be schemed against by his son. In fact, after Lu Qingdi learned about the Bai family, he breathed a sigh of relief. However, at the same time, he did have a headache. No one knew better than him how difficult it was to deal with his son. Originally, he had been prepared for his son to come to him. Should he avoid him or appease him? If he avoided him, others might think that he had really given up on his son. Maybe they would step on his son in some way. How could Lu Qingdi tolerate such a thing? But how could he appease him? If he failed to appease him, it might add fuel to the fire. Even he might be choked with anger. Now, not only did his son not come to him, he had also solved the root of the trouble. However, his previous attitude was already very obvious. Then, his son's anger would not be so easily dispelled. Especially since Lu Qingdi suspected that he already knew of his special birth, and deprived him of the most important thing. Now because of his maternal family, he gave up on him. No matter who it was, they would not be happy. So what should he do? Thinking of this, Lu Qingdi was furious with Su Guifei. That woman. He might have really spoiled her too much. She even forgot how her own honor and favor came about. She dared to act recklessly. Lu Qingdi wanted to strangle that woman more than once. But he restrained himself every time, and did not move. If it had already happened, then there was no way to reverse it. If it didn't happen, that woman might tell Yuan, or everything in a fit of anger. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. However, Lu Qingdi still made a note of it in his heart. Lu Qingdi sent people to give Li Hongyuan a large sum of rewards. As a result, Jin Qinhuang, who used to accept everything, this time disobeyed the imperial edict. He either took the things back to the palace or threw them out on the street. When Lu Qingdi heard the chamberlain's report, he was furious but helpless. He fiercely scolded the chamberlain. A group of good-for-nothings, they couldn't even send the things out. If they weren't good-for-nothings, then what were they? The chamberlain was angry but did not dare to speak. He could only obediently listen to the scolding. Lu Qingdi was busy coaxing his son. The Bai family's matter seemed to have come to an end. The Bai family asked for an audience, but Lu Qingdi did not meet them all. This time, it would not be settled by kneeling down. Even if it was by Shu, it was only about public matters and not private matters. He directly told Bai Shu that if his energy was not enough, he was allowed to go home and recuperate for however long. As a result, the Bai family could only give up and did not dare to mention it again. It could be said that this time, the Bai family's loss was quite heavy. They had worn away their friendship with Lu Qingdi and learned the truth that they did not want to admit. The family's only child was not dead, but they did not even have a single child. For the future of the Bai family, they became enemies with Jin Qinhuang. Not to mention a broad future, they were now on the verge of collapse. It was extremely difficult to stabilize. In addition, the Bai family still adhered to the principle of not easily wronged anyone. They carefully investigated. In fact, the matter that year old Madame Bai thought that she was very strict. In fact, it was not. After all, at that time, she did not have the power of the Bai family's inner residence. At that time no one suspected. Firstly, old Madame Bai was upright and dignified. Secondly, no one thought that old Madame Bai had such big guts. Therefore, it was hidden from them. If they really investigated, even after more than 10 years, there were still clues. Well, the truth was not different from what Jin Qinhuang said. Therefore, old Madame Bai, who was almost 60 years old, was divorced for the most despicable reason of obscenity. At this age, this kind of accusation could be said to be unheard of. Old Madame Bai's parents had passed away long ago. How could the brothers and the others accept a woman like her? If they took her back, it would simply be a disaster to the whole family. The whole family would not be able to raise their heads. Therefore, it could be said that old Madame Bai's divorce was not better than being dealt with in the Bai family. For the Bai family to do this, it was probably because the jar was broken. In any case, so many people knew about it. It would not be strange if the whole capital knew about it. There was no face left. How could they let the woman of the Bai family, who had fallen to this point, live well? As for the person who plotted this behind the scenes, he probably didn't expect such an ending. It was really like drawing water with a bamboo basket. He took the risk of being discovered and spent a lot of effort, but in the end he didn't make a splash at all. At most, after a few ripples, he pushed the emperor closer to that side. How these people were, it did not affect Li Hongyuan at all. He did what he should do as usual. Lu Qingdi's side also did not pay attention to it. Originally, he planned to hand over the horse farm. However, after this incident, he did not care about it anymore. No matter how much money it cost, he was ready to pocket it all. According to Lu Qingdi's character, even if he had some scruples about the horse farm and the precious beasts garden, he would definitely suppress all the impeachment memorials at this time. After coaxing his son, he could also find a lot of reasons to smooth things over. The winning and losing of the race had been calculated. For those who won the bet, Jingwan sent people to go door to door to send silver notes or cash. Jingwan said that she was operating legally. How could she be greedy for people's money? The people who originally thought that they had wasted money were a bit confused when they received the silver. What was that? It seemed to be exactly the same as what they had won. It also said that the next horse race would be in 7 days, and there would be no more invitations. If they had the idea of participating, they should send people to the farm to register in advance. They originally thought that Jin Qinhuang was going to suffer this time. Some people's illegitimate sons had already suffered a few days of supercilious looks. Unexpectedly, there was this kind of reversal. The originally anxious hearts calmed down in an instant. The others choked half to death. And those who were still regretting that they had found something fun with great difficulty. And after one time, the real dandy who might die prematurely, when they heard the news, they were very happy. Then one by one they said, "That's right, who is Jin Qin Wang? How could anything happen to him?" Even if the urgent report from the 800 Li border was about to reach the capital, based on the previous matter, Li Hongyuan would still take his wife to play as usual. In any case, even if someone said that he was indulging in a life of luxury, his old man would suppress his anger and not flare up. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/123594777. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 486. From this point of view, some people were simply helping him. However, as some matters approached, Li Hongyuan was more or less a bit abnormal. Others may not have noticed it, but as his pillow, Jingwan was very clear. According to Jingwan's understanding of him, a certain person was someone who treated all the major matters as minor matters, and all the minor matters were not important. Even if there were times when some people angered him, his fluctuating mood would not last for long. It came quickly and went quickly. It was the true portrayal of mood swings. This time, it lasted for an unexpectedly long time. How could Jingwan not find it strange? Jingwan asked him why. Li Hongyuan only said that it was nothing. Jingwan lightly frowned. Once or twice, he was unwilling to tell her. Jingwan felt that it was nothing. But when it happened too many times, it was inevitable that her heart would feel a bit uncomfortable. However, the matters that he kept in his heart were certainly not trivial. Thus Jingwan felt distressed again. In the end, she could only helplessly sigh and no longer ask. Wife was sensible and considerate, but this was not what Jin Qinwang wanted. He hoped that she could get to the bottom of it. He felt that there was a tacit understanding between the two. Why was it that on this matter, they were unable to reach an agreement? It was very worrying. In order to make his wife feel more at ease, Li Hongyuan put those matters aside. After all, the world was big, and his wife was the most important. However, even if it was like this, Li Hongyuan did not stop tormenting Fu Yenting recently. Although he had never called him in, Fu Yenting was rather uncomfortable recently. He was inexplicably promoted. Although it was still an idle position, he was dog-tired from morning to night. He did not have a share in the morning court, but he woke up earlier than any other courtier. And at night, he could only return home when it was almost midnight. Sitting in the bathtub, he could fall asleep. The time he could spend in bed was at most 4 shurchen. 1 shurchen equals 2 hours. His wife, Madame Wei, was heartbroken, but there was nothing she could do. With the situation in Wuanho's residence, there were many things that Fu Yenting did not have the right to say no to. Compared to Weisher, Fu Yenting believed that it was the court that was looking for trouble with Wuanho Fu. Fu Yenting was much clearer that the one who made him this miserable was actually Jin Qinwang. From when Jin Qinwang first came knocking on his door until now, there were many things that Fu Yenting could not understand. It was true that Jin Qinwang had helped Wuanho Fu a lot, but in all likelihood, he had enmity with him in his previous life. Perhaps he had killed his father and seized his wife, which was why he was hated so much in this life. If he hated him, then he hated him, but he still did not give him a quick death. However, Fu Yenting found joy in the midst of misery. Being squeezed dry like this, his martial arts skills actually improved. To a certain extent, Fu Yenting was the truth. However, the truth was exactly the opposite. It was the other party who had seized his wife. Therefore, the most shameless person was still the living king of hell. In his previous life, he had stolen someone else's wife. In this life, He still bore a grudge against the other party and made him miserable. It was truly unreasonable. When would these days come to an end? Fu Yunting did not think about it. Even if he did, it was useless. He naturally did not think that it would come to an end very soon. Wuan Houfu was born with martial arts. In the end, the sons of the Fu family would not be able to escape the fate of going to the battlefield, unless the entire family was completely wiped out. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, Jingwan sacrificed herself to protect the two seedlings of the Fu family. In this life, Li Hongyuan would protect the entire Wuan Houfu. Not only that, Fu Yunting would not want his life. Instead, he would want Fu Yunting to work for him for the rest of his life. Just like He Zhihai, when some battles arose, they would not end so easily like in the previous life. They would either die on the battlefield or die of old age on the battlefield. Therefore, it could be said that the living king of hell was actually perverted to the point that he was not human. When the horse race was in full swing in the manor, an urgent report was delivered to Lu Qingdi's imperial desk from 800 miles away. At the northwest border, the western Xiongnu and northern Xiongnu armies had joined forces to invade. In just a few days they had already conquered half of the prefecture. If they did not send reinforcements immediately, the entire prefecture would fall into enemy hands. Lu Qingdi was shocked and angry at the same time. He immediately summoned the ministers. Now it was no longer a question of whether to fight or not, but how to fight, and also the issue of the commanding general, provisions, and so on. The war came too suddenly. There was not even a bit of information before. With this kind of unpreparedness, it was normal for Qi Yuan to fall again and again. The important ministers of the court, both civil and military, gathered at the imperial study at the first moment. After reading the urgent report, they could not help but frown. This matter was indeed very thorny. Even if there were factions that supported war and peace, at this time, the peace faction would not stand out. Think about it, they had already lost almost 2 prefectures. If they still dared to talk about peace, they were afraid that the more moderate Lu Qingdi would directly slap them to death. Unless it was the kind of ruler who only knew how to enjoy himself and did not care about anything else, otherwise, no emperor would be indifferent to the loss of territory. At this time, the Minister of Revenue did not cry about being poor. After all, last year when Jin Qinhuang went to Jiangnan, he had collected a considerable amount of money for the national treasury. However, provisions were not something that could be solved with money. Fortunately, last year, the entire country was still considered to have good weather. To mobilize provisions was not a difficult matter. It was just that the war had already reached its peak. It was not realistic to have provisions on hand. After confirming the commander-in-chief, immediately heading to the border to stabilize the situation was the most important thing. It was just that who should sit in the position of commander-in-chief was another problem. Qin Tianming and Xin Shuhan had both taken the initiative to volunteer, and the Minister of War was also once an illustrious military general. Now, although he was older than the other two by more than 10 years, he was duty-bound to protect the country. Lu Qingdi was very clear that these people all had their own standpoints. If something went wrong, before the war outside was finished, there would be chaos inside. Therefore, no matter how urgent the war was, he could not casually decide on a candidate. Pass on Zhen's order, start the court. There was no morning court today, and now it was already past the time for the morning court. To start the court at this time, it must be a major event. Those who were still unaware were somewhat anxious. When they saw those officials who usually did not change their expressions, they could not help but feel even more uneasy. The princes who were originally conferred the title of Wang and Li Hongyuan were also notified at the first moment, and rushed back on horseback, panting. Soon, the civil and military officials knew what had happened and instantly began to discuss. Regarding the commander-in-chief candidate, Zhen is hesitant. Does anyone think that there is a suitable candidate? The people below immediately began to recommend, but in the process of this recommendation, Lu Qingdi's heart basically had an idea. But it was like this that his brows furrowed tighter and tighter. A suitable candidate, that was not suitable. Lu Qingdi was secretly annoyed. Sure enough, he was usually too relaxed, causing the hearts of those sons to become bigger and bigger. He was not dead yet, But his team was about to be divided up cleanly. Lu Qingdi did not express his opinion for a long time. And the people below knew that the emperor was dissatisfied, so the voices gradually died down. From the beginning to the end, the important officials who met Lu Qingdi in the imperial study basically did not say anything, especially the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Yuan Ruizhong and others. When most of them shut up, Lu Qingdi finally nodded at them. Your Majesty, the heir apparent of Wu Anhou was born in a family of generals. Although he has never led an army, he has a profound family background, and I think that he is not bad. Recently, I accidentally saw him and found that he is quite methodical and has the style of his father. Your Majesty, why don't you consider the possibility of letting him lead the army? If Your Majesty is not assured, you can call him to the front and test him. In addition, you can send 2 deputy generals to accompany him to assist the heir apparent of Wu Anhou. What do you think, Your Majesty? Yuan Ruizhong said so neither quickly nor slowly. A strange expression flashed across Lu Qingdi's face. He pondered for a moment and said, Beloved official Ruan's words are reasonable. Come, summon the heir apparent of Wu Anhou. The others looked at each other and understood Lu Qingdi's meaning. However, why was it that the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet was highly valued by the emperor? He was good at dealing with people and had outstanding ability. He was also good at understanding the emperor's thoughts. It was understandable that people like him could not be easily compared to others. Now Wu Anhou was paralyzed in bed. During the holidays, he was always rewarded. However, Lu Qingdi basically did not summon him. To put it nicely, he sympathized with Wu Anhou. However, the entire Marquis mansion was not summoned. Let alone Fu Yenting, the heir apparent of the Marquis mansion was not summoned by the Empress. Was this the treatment of a meritorious official? When Fu Yenting was summoned by the people from the palace, he did not understand why. Afterwards, the eunuch congratulated him with a smile and simply explained the situation. Fu Yenting was surprised. In the depths of his heart, he thought that it was indeed here. His heart inexplicably relaxed. However, although it was said that the Grand Secretary recommended him, Fu Yenting thought of Jin Qinhuang. As for the relationship between the Grand Secretary, who was only loyal to the Emperor, and Jin Qinhuang, he did not want to think about it. Even if he knew, there would be no benefit. Moreover, it had nothing to do with him. When Fu Yenting entered the palace, if it was in the past, he would still hide his incompetence and appropriately show a hedonistic appearance. Now Fu Yenting was completely himself. At least, he had to make people feel that he was convincing enough. The battlefield changed rapidly and was very dangerous. However, for Wu Anhou Mansion, this was an opportunity. Although it was more likely to be a more dangerous path ahead, because the imperial family's attitude towards Wu Anhou Mansion was too strange. Even when there was only a group of old, weak, sick and disabled people left, they still did not let them go. Without enough military merits, they would only be destroyed faster. And military merits were often exchanged with the lives of the Fu family. Right now, to be exact, it was him, Fu Yenting. This official Fu Yenting greets the Emperor. Long live the Emperor! Lu Qingdi sized up Fu Yenting with a heavy gaze. Anyone could see that there was something wrong with Lu Qingdi's emotions. It was not the joy of seeing a young talent, but rather, it was an indescribable feeling. The entire imperial court fell into silence. Fu Yenting quietly knelt on one knee with his eyebrows lowered. After a long silence, Lu Qingdi said, Good, as expected of a son of the Fu family. You are indeed extraordinary. Crown Wu Anhou's heir apparent as a first-ranked defender general of the state. He will be the commander-in-chief of the resistance against the Xiongnu in the northwest. Today, he will lead 30,000 troops to the northwest in hopes of stabilizing the situation at the border as soon as possible and recapturing the lost territory of Qiyuan. There were no more tests. The decision was made so hastily. As a result, even Yuan Ruizhong, who was the one who recommended, couldn't help but frown. It seemed that Jin Qinhuang was right. The emperor had more opinions about Wu Anhou's residence than expected. This was not as simple as superior merits overshadowing the master. After all, the achievements of the Fu family had been in the past for a long time. Wuanho's residents really had nothing to fear now. However, the emperor's performance was not like that. Although in the eyes of many, the emperor was particularly responsible for Wuanho's residents. Thank you for your kindness. This official will not disappoint the emperor. What others could see, Fu Yunting was not blinded by the situation, and accepted it very calmly. Without relatives or friends, how could there be limitless favor? If it exceeded the limit, it would be overpraising. Later, Lu Qingdi appointed several young generals, but it was different from the assistants of the deputy generals mentioned before. Being young meant being hot-blooded and energetic, but it also meant being reckless and impulsive and disobedient. The situation at the border was extremely urgent. The emperor's current actions were simply child's play. However, Lu Qingdi was full of reasons. These were the pillars of Qi Yuan. He believed that they would be able to beat back the enemy. A group of people who had basically never been in contact with war. Even if they had learned a lot, it was all armchair strategy. Without the guidance of experienced generals, this was the first time they entered the battlefield. This was no longer a matter of trust. More people felt that it was inappropriate. Just as they were about to speak, Lu Qingdi directly stood up. It's decided. The matter of the provisions will be handed over to the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of War. Kong Qinhuang, Rui Qinhuang, and Gong Qinhuang will jointly handle it. Leave. Clearly, the atmosphere was so heavy at the beginning. Everyone knew that it was imminent. But in such a short time, the matter was over. What people felt was only carelessness. It was better to say that the beginning was strong, but the ending was weak. Even Lu Qingdi's sons frowned. They couldn't find a place to resolve their doubts. One after another, they went to the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, hoping that he could give them a satisfactory answer. Ruan Rui was also in the clouds, so he naturally fooled everyone. In a place where no one noticed, Ruan Rui and Luo Peishan looked at each other. Their hands moved, reaching a tacit understanding. After the two ministers returned home, they went to find the people that Jin Qinhuang left in their fu. In the current situation, if they didn't see Jin Qinhuang, their hearts would be uneasy. Originally, they just wanted Jin Qinhuang to make preparations and arrange a time to meet. But they didn't expect that just by turning around. It seemed that Jin Qinhuang had already expected that they would want to see him. Dressed in casual clothes, they didn't even disguise themselves. Just like that, they went out. On their respective carriages, they coincidentally met Yu Zhongqing, who was about to leave the city. Yu Zhongqing, under the emperor's order, conveyed the verbal order to Jin Qinhuang. The two people couldn't help but feel nervous, their palms sweating. Then, they found that the commander of the Imperial Guards was intentionally or unintentionally covering for them. Then so easily, without attracting any attention, they went out of the city and went straight to Jin Qinhuang's manor. When they arrived at the manor, just as the two of them were hesitating whether or not they should get off the carriage, Yu Zhongqing spoke first from outside. This lowly official is about to meet Wang Yi. Does Lord Ruan and Lord Luo wish to travel with this lowly official? This had already pointed out their identities. Naturally, there was nothing to be worried about. After getting off the carriage, the three parties greeted each other with tacit understanding. As for the thoughts of as expected of Jin Qinhuang in their hearts, there was no need to say it out loud. Muan personally led the way. When they walked through the secret passage, they could even clearly hear the clamor from the horse farm. It was still Li Hongyuan's private room with the other brothers, but this time, there was only Li Hongyuan and Jingwan inside. That's right, Jingwan was also there. Seeing Jingwan, not to mention Ruan Ruizhong, even Luo Peishan was surprised. It was Yu Zhongqing who accepted it the most. Jingwan also didn't know what her husband was thinking. To challenge the tolerance of a court official, she could only keep a smile, sit quietly and assume an unfathomable posture. First tell Ben Wang, what was Fu Huang's reaction after appointing Fu Yunting as the commander-in-chief? Jin Qinhuang's actions had always been difficult to figure out. He had already asked, so naturally he couldn't be hemming and hawing. The three people respectively gave Jin Qinhuang an answer from their own point of view. And because Yu Zhongqing was the closest to Lu Qingdi, and at the same time, he also saw some things after the tide receded, so he spoke more clearly. Everything, when put together, could be summed up in 3 words. Something was wrong. Li Hongyuan was silent for a moment. So, perhaps only the successive emperors of Qi Yuan knew the reason for the imperial family's strange attitude towards Wu Anho's residence. Then, to be more precise, it should be the Qi Yuan emperor's strange attitude towards Wu Anho's residence. If there was no reason for this, even ghosts wouldn't believe it. Who was appointed as the deputy general? The emperor didn't appoint a deputy general, but a few young generals. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1235948 HTML. Click here to report an error, no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com mobile edition reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 487. Jingwan listened quietly. How could she not notice something was wrong? She was extremely puzzled. Although Lu Qingdi was a little mediocre, there was nothing wrong with his brain. Why would he do such a thing to disregard Qi Yuan's safety? Under Li Hongyuan's instructions, Yu Zhongqing explained everything that happened today. Yuan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan filled in the gaps. Since it's settled, let's leave it at that. We'll deal with it later. Li Hongyuan said, Your Highness, this matter concerns the country. I don't know why His Majesty would do such a ridiculous thing. How could he? Lord Yuan, His Majesty is the ruler. We are his subjects. And so is Your Highness. Even if Lord Yuan is anxious about some things, he has to take it slow. Luo Peishan comforted him. Yuan Ruizhong exhaled. Your Highness, please forgive me. I was too anxious. Lord Yuan cares about the country and the people. It's understandable. However, things are not that bad. After all, this is his country. No matter how joking he is, he has to think about how to explain it to his ancestors in 100 years. Since it was different from his previous life, and he only wanted to destroy Fu Yunting and the entire Wu and Marquis household, now that Fu Yunting was young and handsome, his desire to kill was even stronger. Hence, he changed his strategy. If there was a problem at the start of the war, then he would naturally be able to punish the commander-in-chief and replace him with a capable general. Then his goal would naturally be achieved. In his previous life, it could be said that he had the same plan, but in the end he underestimated Fu Yunting. In the end he did such a crazy thing like sacrificing over 200,000 soldiers. Furthermore, the Fu family used to be very famous, far surpassing the current He family. Fu Yunting is the head of the household. How can he be indifferent to the situation of the Wu and Marquis household? He is very clear in his heart that the Fu family can only advance and not retreat. Hence, how can he not be prepared? I was wrong. Since His Highness thinks highly of him, he can't be bad. However, since the prince mentioned the He family, could he persuade the emperor to allow the He family's youngest son to accompany them? The He family's young master has made outstanding contributions in the Northeast War. This is also something that everyone knows, Yuan Ruizhong said. In the end, no matter what Li Hongyuan said, Fu Yunting was too young. As the saying went, inexperienced people can't do things reliably. He did not have He Zhihai's solid achievements that made people believe in him. In the end, he was not at ease. It was not that he did not believe in Li Hongyuan, but that he did not believe in Fu Yunting. If he wants Fu Yunting dead and Wu Anho destroyed, how could he possibly get involved with He Zhihai, who has a promising future? Lord Yuan should just focus on governing the country. You don't have to worry about things like pacifying the country. Li Hongyuan picked up the teacup beside him and took a sip. When these words came out, it was not only Yuan Ruizhong who was surprised. Although Lu Qingdi's attitude was strange, they did not think that he would have such thoughts. Could it be that Jin Qinhuang was wrong? It was impossible. They had seen Jin Qinhuang's monstrous wisdom more than once, his sky-reaching methods. The things that he was certain of certainly would not be wrong. Why did the emperor say that he wanted to destroy the Fu family? For the sake of Qi Yuan, The Fu family had suffered countless casualties. In the end, only Fu Yunting was left to barely hold the family together. No matter how one looked at it, the emperor should treat the Fu family well. But the things that the emperor did were just to fool the people. To the court officials, to the noble families, he didn't even bother to cover it up. Sometimes he simply hoped that anyone could step on the Wu and Marquis Fu. How preposterous, how chilling. But all of this, what is the reason? Why? Li Hongyuan also wanted to know the reason. In the Li imperial clan, is there a rumor similar to the emperor passes on several generations, Fu replaces Li Xing? Jingwan, who was quietly being a wallflower, couldn't help but open her mouth. Li Hongyuan was startled. Together with the others, they all looked at her. Jingwan felt the pressure and shifted a bit uncomfortably. Her smile was a bit awkward. I was just casually saying it. Of course you can't take it seriously. Jingwan pursed her lips and inwardly scolded herself for having a bad mouth. That such words, how could she casually say it? If she didn't pay attention, then it could really bring disaster to Wuanhou. However, Li Hongyuan suddenly clapped his hands and laughed. One is indeed smart. Although it is absurd, this explanation is the most reasonable. After Li Hongyuan finished laughing, he supported his head with one hand. As one of the 4 dukes and 9 marquises of the past, the Fu clan was established through martial prowess from the very beginning. They had countless talented generals, and since the establishment of the Qiyuan dynasty, the Fu clan had never had a lapse in their military prowess before the current Marquis of Wuan's health. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were the stabilizing force of the Qiyuan dynasty. Logically speaking, such a clan should have always been the head of the nobility. However, the reality was that the Fu clan had always been suppressed by the people on the throne. Every time they won a major battle, they would appear to be blooming on the surface, but internally, they would be weakened by 30%. However, once the Fu clan showed any signs of impropriety, they would immediately be severely punished. If it wasn't for the persistence of the Fu clan, who used the lives of generations after generations of the Fu clan, I'm afraid that the Fu clan would have been destroyed a long time ago. However, this kind of bravery and fearlessness made the people on the throne even more wary. Holding power means death, but without power, death is even faster. Therefore, it was not that the Fu family wanted to control the military power of the Qiyuan. They were forced to do so because they had no other choice. Now that they were at the end of the road, Lu Qingdi did not want to scheme against them again. He wanted to crush this cockroach openly and not damage his own reputation at all. Everyone fell silent for a moment. Obviously, everyone accepted this explanation. Although they did not know the exact reason, they were certain that the Fu family had threatened the royal family. Speaking of which, this kind of thing was actually nonsense. However, it might not be groundless. The Fu family must have had some intentions at the very beginning, or they must have offended some ruthless person. That was why they were plotted against like this. In fact, the people on the throne might not really believe it. However, when it came to the throne, it was a taboo among taboos. Not to mention a shadow, even a word from the Fu family would be eradicated. It was just that the Fu family's bones were too strong, and their vitality was too strong. How did Wan come up with this idea? Li Hongyuan asked curiously. How did he come up with this idea? He did not know if there was such a story in the history of his previous life, but there was such a story in the TV series. When he heard Lu Qingdi's strange attitude, he somehow connected the dots. I just suddenly thought of it. Jingwan felt a little guilty. She could not use words to cover up this kind of thing. After all, no one would have the guts to write a story. I don't think there is any evidence for this kind of thing. Maybe it was passed down by the emperors of the Qiyuan, so there is no need to investigate. However, I have to protect the person he wants to kill. If the Fu family can use him well, he will be a good weapon. Because of the doubts in his heart, he did not know how to deal with some things. However, it was different now. He knew what to do and he would not be afraid of doing it. Li Hongyuan's eyes finally landed on Yu Zhongqing. What message did he ask you to pass on to me? The emperor said that he has been very busy recently, so he asked you to behave yourself. I am really restless. The Qiyuan has been in chaos for a long time. and he can no longer keep his throne. Li Hongyuan said calmly. The others lowered their eyes and pretended not to hear anything. However, he was not boasting shamelessly. It was the truth. All right, all of you can go back. Since he wants to use this opportunity to kill Fu Yenting, you can use this opportunity to replace the people in the Ministry of Revenue. In this life, with Li Hongyuan's early training of Fu Yenting, it was believed that compared to the previous life, Fu Yenting would be able to grasp the situation at the border faster. Moreover, without the obstruction of the Deputy General, that group of young generals would only be Fu Yenting's food. In the end, they might even become Fu Yenting's loyal followers. If the situation at the border did not develop as Lu Qingdi expected, it would be the same as the previous life, and they would tamper with the provisions. This would give them an opportunity. Even if the people in the Ministry of Revenue received Lu Qingdi's instructions, Lu Qingdi himself would not dare to protect them because he could not explain it clearly. Therefore, he could only pinch his nose and let the Ministry of Revenue take the blame. This was very good. He had ruthlessly dug a hole for his other sons. Therefore, no matter who you were, when you went against Jin Qinhuang, you would have already fallen before you knew the real culprit behind the scenes. Guan Ruizhong, Luo Peishan, and Yu Zhongqing left soon after. Jingwan, who had been sitting upright, relaxed a bit. She was not used to this kind of atmosphere. Li Hongyuan smiled. One should get used to this kind of thing earlier. Get used to it earlier? How can I, a woman of the inner residence, participate in the matters outside? Wan, you don't have to say one thing and mean another in front of your husband. Now that so many things are handled by you, is it not considered participating in the matters outside? Dealing with it in private and participating in it in front of the court officials are two completely different things. Jingwan directly ignored a certain person's previous sentence. What's the difference in essence? All right, since a certain person did not care, why should she care? In any case, the court officials would not nag in front of her. Li Hongyuan continued to do things his own way. The words that Lu Qingdi had Yu Zhongqing bring over, to him, could not even be considered as wind that passed one's ears. In any case, he must not dampen his wife's mood. In the matter of the Bai family, don't think that Li Hongyuan was completely targeting the Bai family. Based on his understanding of Lu Qingdi, that man definitely wanted to let Jingwan take the blame for everything. According to Li Hongyuan's temperament, this kind of thing was even more serious than stripping him of his nobility. Even if it was a matter of face, he would not give him any face. Therefore, the horse race was still in full swing. The next day, after gathering the troops and horses, Fu Yenting put on the armor that belonged to his father. There were countless marks on it, but there was nothing wrong with it. Obviously, it had been carefully maintained all year round. Riding on a tall horse, he looked extraordinarily handsome. Many people might have seen him like this for the first time. At this moment, everyone's impression of him quietly changed. When it came to face, Lu Qingdi had done everything. Standing on the city wall with the civil and military officials, he spoke touching and encouraging words with a little bit of expectation. He even gave Fu Yenting an imperial edict on the spot. That imperial edict was enough to mobilize the Northwest Border Army and the garrison troops of the neighboring counties. The total number of troops added up to 300,000. At this point, if Fu Yenting still lost, he would definitely be condemned by everyone, and even be called the shame of the Fu family. Regarding this point, Fu Yenting was very clear in his heart. However, Fu Yenting did not pay attention to these things. Instead, he paid attention to his family. His paralyzed uncle, his widowed mother, aunts, sister-in-law, and his only 3 nephews and nieces, as well as his own wife and children. A group of old, weak, sick, and disabled people, but they were also his concern. They were engraved in his bones and absolutely could not be abandoned. From beginning to end, he persevered and gritted his teeth to face all the reasons for the humiliation and hardship. Usually they almost never went out, but at this time, they were all gathered here. Perhaps it was a farewell, or perhaps it was a farewell. Their eyes were clearly reluctant to part, but no one spoke to urge them to stay. They just looked and shed tears. Fu Yenting's eyes were slightly red, but he became more determined. He pulled the reins, Jia, and rode away. No matter how Jin Qinhuang treated him, in his heart, he was actually grateful towards Jin Qinhuang. The Fu family knew what the imperial family's attitude towards them was. It was not that they did not resent, it was not that they did not hate, but the elders always said that they had a clear conscience and that they were doing it for the common people of the world, who did not understand righteousness, but looking at his own family, his father's generation did it for the common people of the world, but who did it for them? Therefore, when Jin Qinhuang came to find him, he swore that no matter what, as long as he could keep his family safe, he would sell his life to him. Last night, he had already received a promise from Jin Qinhuang, so now, even if the road ahead was unknown, his heart was at peace. In the billowing dust cloud, the common people were still sending them off. Perhaps in their eyes, with such a mighty lion, Qi Yuan had already won. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan were also sitting in the carriage. The curtain of the carriage was half lifted, and Jingwan's gaze fell on the people of Wu Wanho's residence. She was speechless. It's just nonsense. Does the emperor feel uneasy after going to this extent? Li Hongyuan tilted his head and looked at Jingwan. In the previous life, and also today, there was no Wei Shi in the Fu family, only Luo Shi, and there was no Wu Wanho now. The one who came out was not Wu Wanho's heir, but the new Wu Wanho. Fu Yenting did not have a son, and he and his brothers stood behind the man on the throne. However, looking at Wanwan's current expression, perhaps he could roughly guess how Wanwan felt at that time. Come to think of it, it was not much different. After all, at this time in the previous life, he had not been married to Fu Yenting for a long time, and they had not consummated their marriage, so there were no feelings between them. More importantly, he was an outsider, and that kind of complicated feeling was hard to describe. Now that he thought about it, in the previous life, Jingwan saw through the reason why the man on the throne treated the Fu family. Just like yesterday, that was why he was trapped in the Fu family and could not escape. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/125168772. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikuga mobile reading website and Bicken.com. Chapter 488. Jingwan looked at it for a moment and retracted her gaze. Wu Wanho Fu had already fallen to this point. It was useless to think more. As a certain person said, they could only slowly plan. They had to stake the safety of Qi Yuan, the lives of countless people, and perhaps even the 300,000 soldiers to form a game. The one who started the game was Lu Qingdi. Although he had set up a trap to kill Fu Yenting, Jin Qinhuang had interfered. Lu Qingdi was unaware that the situation had quietly changed. However, no matter what, people would die in a war. A Yuan. Jingwan's gaze had just landed on Li Hongyuan when she clearly felt that something was wrong with him. She couldn't help but think of his strange situation last time at the village. Jingwan immediately leaned over and reached out to hold his face, forcing him to face her. A Yuan. Li Hongyuan returned to his senses and the negative emotions in his eyes quickly dissipated. He held Jingwan's hand and very naturally kissed her on the lips. It's nothing. In fact, Li Hongyuan was always quite dangerous at this time. No one dared to approach him. Only Jingwan could be so unscrupulous. However, regarding the matter of danger, Jingwan might not know for the rest of her life. Jingwan pursed her lips and was slightly hesitant. Does A Yuan have anything to say to me? Although she finally asked, it was still vague. Li Hongyuan chuckled. Then Wan. What do you want to know? Ask. No matter what you ask, this husband will tell you everything he knows. Ask. Ask what? How to ask? Instead of telling the truth, she had to play this kind of question and answer game. It was really annoying. Let's talk about it later. This is not the place to talk. Jingwan once again chose to be an ostrich. Perhaps, in her heart, secrets needed to be exchanged with secrets. It was not that she could not let the other party know about her personal matters, but when it came to it, she could not help but show her timidity. After all, Traveling through time and space was not a trivial matter. She was not sure what kind of attitude her husband would have. In the end, life was too comfortable. She was addicted and greedy. Li Hongyuan gently stroked the side of Jingwan's face. It's indeed not the place to talk, but if Wan wants to, we can talk anytime. Jingwan smiled and leaned on Li Hongyuan's body, smelling the unique scent on his body. Her eyes unconsciously filled with a sense of attachment. The curtains of the carriage had already been considerately put down by the people outside to prevent their master from doing something inappropriate in broad daylight. These people were also worried to death. Just as he was about to return to the mansion, Lu Qingdi's personal servant came over, trembling with fear. Bodyguard Qian gently knocked on the edge of the carriage. Your Highness, His Majesty wants to see you. Li Hongyuan was holding Jingwan in his arms and whispering in her ear. When he heard this, his face turned cold. Let's go back. The meaning could not be more obvious. He did not want to see them. The servant watched the carriage leave, but did not dare to reach out to stop it. He braced himself and went back to report. This evil creature. Lu Qingdi was so angry that he almost fainted. If it wasn't for the fact that he still had reason, Lu Qingdi might have already gone straight to the door, brought out his father's prestige, and fiercely reprimanded him. In fact, don't even mention putting it into action. If he really went to the door, he reckoned that he would only be angered even more. The other princes who were conferred the title of Wang, as well as the other court officials, each and every one of them looked down and pretended that they did not know anything. In any case, the matter between this father and son, no one else could meddle. If they meddled, they would not be able to gain any benefits, but it was more likely that Lu Qingdi would shift the flames of war. To them, Lu Qingdi would not just reprimand them. Although Lu Qingdi might not scold them so fiercely, but other things would not be as indifferent as to Jin Qinhuang. They might not be able to eat the consequences. Lu Qingdi scolded for a full quarter of an hour without taking a break. It could be said that he was full of energy. TSK, the emperor scolding Jin Qinhuang more had its benefits. Not to mention other things, his spirit was completely different. Usually they would not see him so well. After scolding until his mouth and tongue were dry, Lu Qingdi flung his sleeve, arranged the carriage to return to the palace. Returning to the Wangfu, this was a secret and safe place for Li Hongyuan. Jingwan looked for something to do. Obviously, the previous topic in the carriage seemed to have been forgotten. On the surface, Li Hongyuan seemed to follow her wishes, but in reality, it was probably not the case. In any case, there is nothing that must be done. It is better to go to the study. Li Hongyuan did not allow for an explanation. He half unyieldingly brought Jingwan into the study. Then he directly spread out the paper, dipped it in ink and began to draw on the paper. Li Hongyuan's movements were very fast. And with one look, one could tell that it was not a freehand painting, but a meticulous brush. With just a few strokes, the outline of a woman appeared. Gradually, Jingwan was entranced. Although it was just a silhouette, but this figure was grasped very accurately. If it was not her, who else could it be? Although Li Hongyuan had been learning meticulous brushwork for some time, it was obvious that Jingwan had not seen him draw a portrait. All the outlines of the woman appeared vividly on the paper. Then he began to color. Almost without thinking, Li Hongyuan found the color that he needed from the various paints. The speed at which he mixed the colors was also very fast. It could be said that he was faster than Jingwan, the original creator. The color that he mixed was also very beautiful. The dyeing effect was indescribably satisfying. However, as time passed, Jingwan became more and more silent. Li Hongyuan's painting took more than 2 hours, and the whole painting was basically completed. It was lively and full of charm. It was not exaggerated, but anyone who saw the painting would probably be moved by the woman in the painting. It was her, but it also seemed like it was not her. Jingwan thought that even if she was given another 10 years, she would not be able to reach such a level. After all, these things were also dependent on talent. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that a certain someone's talent was a little too good. Moreover, rather than calling it talent, it was better to call it familiarity. The kind of familiarity that was ingrained into the bones. There was no need to think, No need to think, and it was completely at the will of the heart. What existed in the heart was simply engraved. For it to be so deep to such an extent, it was unknown how many strokes were drawn. Some things, even if one wanted to deceive oneself and others, seemed to be impossible at this moment. Li Hongyuan hung the brush on the pen holder and looked at Jingwan. His eyes were still gentle and affectionate. Wan, do you have anything you want to ask? Jingwan clutched the handkerchief in her hand and looked straight at Li Hongyuan. The expression in her eyes was indescribable. Some things were not difficult to guess because one had experienced it. After all, if one had not experienced it, one would think that it was a fantasy when one heard it from others, let alone think about it. Yuan, you have met me before, right? The kind that has a deep connection with me? Li Hongyuan nodded gently. Yes. When? Jingwan clenched the handkerchief so tightly that her fingertips began to turn white. Li Hongyuan clearly felt that Jingwan's mood was not right. It was not quite what he expected. He looked at her without blinking and tried to appear as gentle as possible. He suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, and even thought about whether to end this topic and use other reasons to avoid it. The living king of hell, who had always been carefree, nothing could stop him from moving forward. However, at this moment he was hesitating. However, the matter had already reached this point, and it could not be resolved just by beating around the bush. The problem that existed in the bottom of their hearts might instead become a barrier between them. Once the barrier was enlarged, it might never be able to be repaired again. Li Hongyuan's eyes darkened, but he did not show any abnormality. Past life. However, the meaning of this past life may not be the same as usual. The same Qi Yuan, the same person, but there are many differences. For example, Wan is not my wife. So, the person you love is not me at all, but the person in your memory who is exactly the same as me. Jingwan suddenly became excited. Rebirth, no wonder. In this case, many things could be explained clearly. It was like a game, and only he, Li Hongyuan, could load the file and start over. The others did not have this honor. Therefore, his strange attitude towards her at the beginning and his calling of Wan at the beginning was all because of her, and also not because of her. She was not a substitute, and she was a substitute. Jingwan stood up abruptly and turned to leave. Li Hongyuan reacted quickly and grabbed her. He did not expect that the problem would appear in the most unexpected place. Wan, why would you think that? What do you mean by the person who is exactly the same as you? You are in that book. It was originally me. Jingwan sneered. In my memory, you treated me well and your feelings for me were all inexplicable. It couldn't even be considered love at first sight. I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't participate in it at all. Now you're implicating me and saying that it was me. If it were you, what would you think? Li Hongyuan probably understood the crux of the problem. Thinking about Jingwan's attitude towards love, it seemed that it was not difficult for him to understand the reason for her attitude. Wan, you can't be like this. You can't deny my feelings for you completely just because you don't know. If your highness didn't have a second chance, I think your highness wouldn't have such deep feelings for me. Yes, that's right. If I didn't do it all over again, we would still be in our previous lives. At this time, you were married and we didn't have any interactions at all. Everything developed according to plan. Then, you were deeply involved in the Wu and Marquis household. In order not to implicate the Luo family, you defiled yourself and asked to be removed from the clan. Your grandfather was sad because of you. Your grandmother cried until she was blind. You worked hard for the Wu and Marquis household, and the Luo family secretly helped you. They were almost discovered and their entire family was wiped out. As for me, I was completely deceived. I was poisoned when I was only 10 years old, and was judged to not live past 30. Then, a few months later, when I found out about everything, I was assassinated in all sorts of ways and had to escape from the capital in a sorry state. When I was on the brink of death, I was pulled back by you when I was in despair. I fought for the throne in a situation where I had nothing and couldn't save the Fu family in time. I couldn't protect you and could only watch as you died in my arms. This made me go crazy and massacre the entire capital. This is what you participated in, but also didn't. Jingwan was so shocked that she was speechless. In her mind, even if things were different from the previous life that she didn't know about, it wouldn't be too different. Wan, you can't be so cruel. You can't completely deny my feelings for you just because you didn't know about it and didn't participate in it. Maybe in your eyes, my feelings for you are ridiculous, but in my heart, there has always been only you. There is no one else other than you. When I came back, I was 10 years old and you were 2 years old. Although I was trapped in the palace, if I wanted you to come to the capital early, it was not impossible. But I knew the influence of environment on a person, so I suppressed myself and allowed you to grow up according to your original path. You wouldn't know how painful it was if you didn't experience it for yourself. You don't know about it. After I came back, do you know how lucky I was? Even if I had to change my fate and risk universal condemnation, I still wanted you to live a happy and healthy life. So Wan, don't do this to me. You are gouging my heart out and taking my life. The insufferably arrogant king of hell showed an unprecedented vulnerability. His eyes were red, as if he would cry at any time. Jingwan looked at him in a daze, completely speechless. Li Hongyuan hugged her tightly in his arms. In a place where Jingwan could not see, there was no trace of weakness, only determination and craziness. However, his voice was still as gentle as ever. Wan, you don't think I like you. But I feel that I've loved you for more than 2 lifetimes. You're the one who's unfair to me. You're the one who doesn't know that you owe me. No matter what you think, you can only be mine in life and mine in death. You can't escape. If you have the slightest thought of leaving me, I will lock you up in a place where only I exist. Do you know, in fact, I wanted to do this for a long time, but I was afraid that you would be unhappy. I was afraid of hurting you. So Wan, don't give me the chance to go crazy. Jingwan raised her head and rested her chin on Li Hongyuan's shoulder. Her face was already covered in tears. Regardless of whether she cared about being treated as a substitute or not, she had to admit that her heart ached for this man. It was said that the one who always remembered was the most painful. If everything was as he said, then he had always been the one working hard. And he had always been bearing everything. Jingwan felt that perhaps she could treat those days that she didn't know about as his lost memories. It seemed that it wasn't difficult to accept that the one in his memory was her. You owe me, you don't love me. Li Hongyuan was still complaining about her heartlessness. As he spoke, he seemed to be unable to continue. Wan, how about this? If you think that it's not you, then give me a chance. Let's start over. You weren't my wife in our previous life, and I also had a princess consort. I had more than one woman, but in this life, I only want you, and you will always be the only one. What do you think? It seemed that as long as he could keep her, he could endure, he could compromise, he could do anything. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1251687 HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 489. Okay. Unconsciously, this word came out of Jingwan's mouth. After a moment, Jingwan slowly reached out and hugged Li Hongyuan's waist. She knew very well that this man was not wrong in this matter. She should not have questioned his feelings for her and hurt him. She was the one who went into a dead end. However, things like feelings could not be controlled by reason. Because she cared, she was worried about gains and losses. Because she loved deeply, she could not tolerate any flaws. Even if it was herself, she could overturn the vinegar jar. At this moment, Jingwan also deeply realized that she was really, completely in love with this man. There were many things that she could no longer retreat from. However, the malice in Li Hongyuan's eyes did not dissipate because of Jingwan's words. Instead, it became stronger. He had never been a generous person. On the contrary, he was very narrow-minded and greedy. There was no doubt that Wan loved him now. But it was not enough. At least, She would love him no matter what and would not have the slightest thought of leaving him. He wanted everything, he wanted absolute. Wanwan won't leave me, right? No matter what his face was and what emotions were in his eyes, his voice was still cautious and there was a trace of grievance. Jingwan's heart ached again. She gently stroked Li Hongyuan's back. Of course not. But just now, I just started, and Wanwan got up and wanted to leave. Did you ever care about my feelings? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I'm just very flustered and scared. I'm scared that you don't love me, and I'm scared that I'll break down if I continue to stay here. I don't want to lose my last bit of self-respect when I find out that I've never received your love. Obviously, I'm wrong. Fortunately, you pulled me back. Forgive me, okay? I promise. As long as Wanwan doesn't want to leave me, you can do anything. Li Hongyuan seemed to put himself in the lowest position. Silly. We are husband and wife, and you are a prince. As your princess, where can I go? Don't overthink it. Could it be that in Wanwan's eyes, you're only forced to stay because of your rebirth? Li Hongyuan let go of Jingwan, grabbed her shoulder, and stared at her. His eyes were red, and he seemed to be very agitated. If it was any other time, Jingwan would have secretly rolled her eyes at him and complained in her heart when she saw him acting up. But now it was completely different. She also understood the reason why he would be neurotic from time to time. It was because the shadow left behind by his previous life was too heavy. So even the slightest movement could make him uneasy. It was her fault. She didn't realize that he was always uneasy. It was her fault. She didn't do enough to make him calm down. That's not what I meant. I just wanted to tell you that I can't leave you. Yuan, where you are, is where my heart belongs. Li Hongyuan's emotions calmed down a little. He pulled Jingwan into his arms again. Wanwan, I've said it before. If I have a change of heart, you can take my life. But if you have a change of heart, I probably won't kill you. I'll just imprison you for the rest of your life, so that I'll be the only one in your life. I don't think anyone wants that kind of life. My heart has been tied to you for a long time. How can I change? I know that there is no way to separate my heart. My feelings from the beginning to the end will not change because of the passage of time. I believe that no one in the world will treat me better than you. Even if there is, I only want you. Li Hongyuan snorted. How can anyone treat you better than me? Yes, I believe it. From this, it could be seen that Jingwan's emotions were completely led by Li Hongyuan. Because he showed weakness, because he leaked a little bit of his emotions, Jingwan completely couldn't care about herself. She only wanted to appease him and follow his lead. It was obvious that in her heart, everything about him surpassed her. The simplest point was, did she still remember her initial emotions? Therefore, in the face of such a scheming Jin Qinwang, how could Jingwan be his opponent? In this relationship, it seemed that she was in the lead, but in reality, she had always been in the palm of his hand. How could she escape from that range? However, although Li Hongyuan played tricks, but what tied Jingwan down was still that true feeling. Thus, even if Jingwan was a little silly, it didn't matter. Wang Ye, Wang Fei, do you want more tea? Because there was no movement for a long time, Gong Mama timely opened her mouth. Obviously, in their current atmosphere, having a third person to ease it was also good. At least it could calm them down a little. Jingwan withdrew from Li Hongyuan's arms and sat to one side. She lowered her head and used a handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes. And the current Li Hongyuan, other than Jingwan, no one could make him reveal any special emotions. Even if there were 8 or 9 out of 10, it was just an act. At this time, there were no emotions. With an outsider, it was absolutely easy to control. Come in. Gong Mama came in and quickly changed the hot tea. Her gaze very obscurely swept across Li Hongyuan and Jingwan's faces. What kind of eyesight did she have? Sure enough, did they quarrel? Before they entered the study, Li Hongyuan ordered everyone to retreat far away. Without permission, no one was allowed to approach. For more than 2 shurchen, everything was fine. Suddenly, there was movement from behind. Because it was far away, only slight sounds could be heard. However, no one dared to approach. I'll take my leave. After that, Li Hongyuan poured a cup of warm tea for Jingwan. He stood in front of Jingwan and gently wiped his fingers under her eyes. Drink some water. Jingwan raised her head and looked at him. She hummed softly and took the cup. She took a sip. Wanwan, you can ask me anything you want to know. I can tell you everything. Jingwan opened her mouth. It seemed that there were many things she wanted to ask. However, at this moment, there was nothing she wanted to ask. Moreover, it seemed meaningless. From what he said just now, she already knew a lot of things. Those things were really not what she wanted to see. She sighed at the Wu Anho mansion before. On the other hand, she didn't know that she had such a close relationship with that family. However, her family's love for her didn't change. Then, why did she marry into the Wu Anho mansion when she clearly knew what kind of situation they were in? There was also the situation of the Luo family, especially her grandmother. Not to mention experiencing it, Jingwan's heart ached when she thought about it. According to Jingwan's understanding of Li Hongyuan, given his narrow-mindedness, mentioning the Wu Anho mansion was actually a very dangerous topic. Therefore, Jingwan cleverly didn't ask. However, Li Hongyuan's eyes were sharp. Seeing Jingwan's hesitation, he basically knew what she was thinking. His face suddenly darkened. Do you want to know how you married into the Wu Anho mansion? Li Ruyu schemed to make you fall into the water at the Ding General Duke's mansion. Fu Yenting saved you. As for the reason, it seems to have something to do with Sun Yilin. Are you satisfied? In one sentence, he implicated two people in his minefield. Jingwan, who was feeling sorry for him a moment ago, didn't know whether to laugh or cry now. She didn't mention it. It was he who insisted on making trouble. Moreover, according to him at this time, she didn't have any interaction with this man, okay? How could he blame this on her now? No matter what kind of relationship she had with Fu Yenting in his memory, Fu Yenting actually had nothing to do with her. Hadn't all possibilities been cleanly cut off by this man? Wanwan is very loyal. Even if she became my woman and gave birth to my son, she still refused to enter the imperial mausoleum because she felt sorry for Fu Yenting. She didn't even enter the Fu family's ancestral grave. Li Hongyuan's face darkened as he spoke, and he started to become irritable again. She still kept Fu Yenting and protected the Fu family? This prince should have destroyed them long ago. Jingwan didn't respond. After all, anything she said could be wrong and make this man's illness worse. She just watched him get angry at himself. However, her expression remained gentle because she instantly understood why this man protected the Fu family. It was because she had once wanted to protect the Fu family. However, she was someone else's wife, but she became his woman and even gave birth to his son? If this man didn't take her by force, he must have threatened her. It was fine if he didn't feel embarrassed after doing such a thing, but he still wanted to cause trouble for others. Jingwan really wanted to know how thick his skin was. Even steel couldn't compare to it. Wanwan, what are you thinking? Do you think that this prince should protect the Fu family? I'm just thinking that I'm really too stupid to have been schemed against by someone like Li Ruyu. Jingwan said without thinking. He naturally knew what kind of person Jingwan was. He also knew how she would react when her words didn't match her heart. What she said and what she thought were two completely different things. It wasn't the first time either, so he couldn't be bothered to make a fuss about it. What he really cared about was stupid. Li Ruyu is an imperial princess after all. She asked someone to throw you into the water without any hesitation. Do you think you can avoid it with your small body? He often said that Jingwan was stupid, but when Jingwan really said that to him, he was unhappy. Therefore, he had already said everything, so it was best to remain silent. Li Hongyuan half knelt down and looked into her eyes. There is one thing that I need Wanwan to explain to your husband. What is it? Have you ever cared about Fu Yenting? This was actually what Li Hongyuan cared about the most. Jingwan blinked. Should she go along with him, or? Jingwan chose to tell him the truth. Yuan, you don't make sense. How would I know? When the current emperor of Wu Anho passed away, you married him during the mourning period. You and Fu Yenting did not consummate the marriage. More than a month later, today, Fu Yenting embarked on the journey to the northwest border because he had underestimated Fu Yenting. It was you who went to many places and knelt in front of the palace for several hours to beg for the provisions. Then, you personally delivered them to the border, and stayed there until more than 200,000 soldiers died in the Qiyuan. Fu Yunting was charged with treason, and was escorted back to the capital. Everyone in Wuanho's residence was imprisoned except for you. Only you managed to escape the calamity temporarily. You secretly returned to the capital, and tried to save the rest of the Wuanho's family. When you were at your wits' end, you came to me for help. I admit that I was despicable and shameless. I took the opportunity to take your body, but you were still a virgin at that time. So tell me, have you ever cared about him? Even if you don't know anything, I'm sure you know the answer to your own situation. Jingwan was silent for a moment. She reached out and covered Li Hongyuan's face with her hand. I can tell you very clearly that I never did. Jingwan knew very well what kind of person she was. She had always been more rational than emotional. It was impossible for her to fall in love at first sight. If what he said was true, then there was no doubt that she might have some very special feelings for Fu Yunting, but it was definitely not the love between a man and a woman. As a legitimate husband and wife, even if the one who insisted on not consummating the marriage was Fu Yunting, she would definitely not allow herself to remain a virgin if she fell in love with him in those days where there was no tomorrow. Moreover, it was obvious that the wars at the border were endless. Everyone might not be able to touch the ground at all. She and Fu Yunting must have only seen each other a few times. How could they develop feelings for each other? However, she would definitely not fall in love with him because of some hero complex. Respect was one thing, but love was another. Li Hongyuan reached out and hugged Jingwan's waist. He buried his head in her arms. Wanwan, I'm very happy. Really? Jingwan's fingers stroked his hair. She felt a little sad. Even if she did not want to experience those things in his memory, she still missed out on their first meeting. However, this kind of thing was just thinking about it. After all, if she was really someone else's wife, then no matter how good he was to her, she would not indulge herself. She would definitely restrain herself to the end. In the end, it was her current self who had the advantage. She had no burden, no hardship, and she did not need to care about the flowers and plants around him. If she did not experience his life, then even if they became husband and wife, the possibility of them falling in love in the end was extremely low. Because he was a prince. In a feudal society, men's rights were paramount. How could he not sleep with her before marriage, and only stay with her after marriage? Although there were regrets, she should be content. This man had experienced too many things that no one knew about. His heart could be said to be riddled with holes. She should cherish him and heal his pain. Jingwan looked at the door in a daze. She suddenly thought of something. Ah Yuan, Nurse Gong was the person you arranged to be by my side? Yes. Li Hongyuan did not deny it. She was originally indebted to the imperial noble consort. She was loyal to the imperial noble consort. Although she later served me, in fact, because of some of my ways of doing things, she did not like it. She just did her duty and nothing more. Look, I sent her to Qi, and managed to serve you for 2 or 3 years. After she came back, as her former master, I had no place in her eyes at all. Jingwan chuckled. She wanted to say that someone deserved it, but she did not have the intention to vent her anger on Nurse Gong. Although Nurse Gong should have passed a lot of information about her to someone, she was now inseparable from this man. She could not get up from being spied on long ago. If she was not moved, she would be more or less angry. However, she would not be furious. After all, Nurse Gong did do her best for her, and was sincerely good to her. What about Sister He and Bai Xiao? Were you the one who sent them to me? Yes. However, these 2 people were prepared for you from the beginning. They did not even know who was the one who trained them. There is no other master. Jingwan nodded. You must have meddled in my marriage. Based on your temperament, how could you allow me to be engaged to someone else? Ben Wang's reputation is so bad. If your reputation is not bad, can you marry me? Li Hongyuan answered with righteousness. Your reputation is bad. That is also caused by you. Who is to blame? Ben Wang's reputation is not bad. Is it your turn to be Jin Qinhuang's Difei? Jin Qinhuangfu's rear courtyard has long been filled. Li Hongyuan stared at Jingwan with an expression of, "Who am I doing this for?" He was quite dissatisfied with Jingwan's unable to differentiate good from bad. "So, you deliberately let me get engaged and then break off the engagement? Just to ruin my reputation?" Jingwan was convinced by his logic. "It's only 2 times. No matter how bad it is, can it be compared to you? It was originally prepared for 4 times, but Chen Zhengmin and Sun Yilin both have deep feelings for you." Li Hongyuan's face became ferocious, his killing intent rising again. He caused trouble himself but took his anger out on others. If she did not have an engagement with those 2 people, even if they had feelings for each other, it would not be deep. After all, if she did not give them hope, then perhaps they would have given up on the idea earlier. Because of this, your plans for the next 2 times were put on hold. He was about to die from jealousy. How could it continue? So I directly went to find your grandfather. In any case, it must be Jin Qinhuang Fei's maternal family. It doesn't matter if it is dragged into the water earlier. Jingwan facebombed. "But you did so much. Our marriage was exchanged by me using things." It was a blow to his heart. Regarding this point, Li Hongyuan was very happy. At the same time, it also became the black history of his black history. Seeing that a certain person's face was almost as black as ink, she quickly lowered her head and kissed him. The process is not important, as long as the result is satisfactory. Li Hongyuan's expression became a little better. He was usually such an insufferably arrogant person. He was cold, taciturn, and domineering. In front of her, he was like a child. After that, Jingwan asked about some other things. It was about the many people and things that she cared about. However, Li Hongyuan was vague about many things. He did not say everything he knew without reserve. Those things were basically dark and cruel. Li Hongyuan played tricks to trick Jingwan into feeling pity for him. It was one thing, but he did not want to tell her the things that were really dark. Jingwan also understood that those were things that he was brooding about and could not forget. "I'm here all right." Li Hongyuan naturally understood what she meant, but the Qi Yuan is not settled, the world is not at peace, and the most important thing is that Wan's death calamity has not passed. So if the overall situation was not settled, his heart would not be at peace? Then no matter what a Yuan does, think about me more, okay? Moreover, a Yuan has done so much and changed so much. There will not be any death calamity. We will all be fine and slowly grow old together. Of course we will be fine. Unknowingly, Li Hongyuan's posture had changed from half kneeling to sitting on the ground. He leaned his head on Jingwan's lap. "There is one more thing that I have to tell Wan. The reason why I came back is because of the imperial noble consort. What Master Liaochen said is basically true. The imperial noble consort is indeed special, but her origin is unknown. Her spirit is indeed still alive, but it is not wandering. Before I came back, she was trapped in the jade pendant that was found in the Jade Essence Palace. After I came back, her spirit entered the body of Qin Shufei, who had the closest fate to her. Last time, when Qin Shufei was poisoned, she temporarily took control of Qin Shufei's body. In order to send me back, she wanted to disperse her spirit. 81 altars were praying for the world's blessings, just to prolong her existence. At least, she could fulfill some of her wishes. Although she had suffered enough today, Jingwan was still shocked. It's a pity that the imperial noble consort fell into your father's hands. If she didn't fall into that man's hands, I wouldn't be here. Li Hongyuan said angrily. Jingwan choked and was speechless. So the only thing she could do now was to do her best, and at least let her die without regrets. There was no room for any mishaps regarding the altars. I've said what I need to say. Now isn't it your turn to speak, Wan? Jingwan was not surprised by this. After all, when he had nothing, he was able to surpass all his brothers to ascend the throne. In addition, he had similar experiences. How could he not notice? https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/125168774. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com mobile edition website, bicken.com. Chapter 490. My situation is different from my Yuan's. With Jingwan's reincarnation as a foundation, it was not that unbelievable that she had transmigrated. She was not worried that he would not be able to accept it. Jingwan organized her thoughts. I came from another place, a place that can never be found here. When I Yuan came back, he transmigrated through time. It's as if time went back. I probably transmigrated through space. Space, how do I explain it? It's like there are two aromatherapy balls, Qi Yuan, and everything that can be extended from Qi Yuan are in one ball. Even if I were to redo my life, it would still be in the same ball. However, one came from the other ball. Under normal circumstances, the two aromatherapy balls are not connected and cannot touch each other, Li Hongyuan continued. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan strangely. His ability to understand was amazing. After all, Jingwan did not know what was going on. If she had to explain it, she might not be able to explain it better than this. Jingwan felt that if this man was in her previous life, he probably would not have made a fool of himself just because he was an antique. That's pretty much what I mean. In a sense, you can also think of me as a reincarnation with the memories of my previous life. That place is very different from this place. However, its history is similar to the history of this place and Qi Yuan. The geographical location is also very similar. The era I lived in was very different from the current Qi Yuan. Jingwan said slowly with a hint of nostalgia. Li Hongyuan listened attentively. Although he had expected that the place Jingwan lived in might be very different, the difference was far beyond his imagination. Although he could not accept all of it, there were many things that were worth looking forward to. One is talking about the environment she lived in. What about you? You can be together freely. If we are together, we will be together. If we disagree, we will separate. How many men has Wan slept with? Li Hongyuan raised his head and looked at Jingwan. His eyes were dark, and it was obvious that he was going to turn hostile if something went wrong. That's just a way to get to know each other and improve their relationship before marriage. Compared with a Yuan having multiple wives and concubines, it doesn't seem to be anything at all, right? Only the magistrate is allowed to set a fire, but the common people are not allowed to light a lamp. Jin Wangya, there is no such thing as you. Jingwan found it funny. Li Hongyuan's expression was terrible, but he knew very well that if he pursued this matter, he would be destroying their relationship. Moreover, Wan's environment at that time had always been like this. Just like in Qi Yuan now, it was normal for men to have multiple wives and concubines. There was nothing to criticize. Therefore, even if he was unhappy, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. However, I only had one. The most we could do was hold hands. Because I didn't want to have any further contact with him, he separated from me. Jingwan continued to say with a smile. The expression on Li Hongyuan's face immediately turned bright. It's good that they separated. That kind of brat who only thinks about molesting women, what's the point of staying? One should have separated from him earlier. Jingwan gently rubbed Li Hongyuan's face with her fingers. She chuckled and did not speak. As long as he was happy, it was fine. So Wan did not get married. No. In our country, the law has a requirement for the age of marriage. In our country, women are 20 years old. When I left that world, I was already over 20 years old. However, I did not think about getting married. Moreover, there is no rule that states that you have to get married when you reach the age of marriage. Choosing to be single for a lifetime is not a problem. Of course, the premise is that there will be no relatives nagging. Wan's family must be very rich, right? Li Hongyuan knew how the environment affected a person. It shaped a person's temperament and formed a person's behavior and habits. Since Wan was already over 20 years old at that time, many things had already been formed. She had been in the Luo family for more than 10 years. The things that were deeply ingrained in her bones were very difficult to change. Especially when Li Hongyuan saw how tenacious and unyielding Jingwan was. The more she was like this, the more difficult it was to change some things. You can say that. After all, I'm also the son of an official. Although the difference between the officials there and Qi Yuan's officials is huge, there are more or less similarities. Moreover, my father's position isn't considered low and is definitely different from ordinary people. He has high expectations for me. After all, at least on the surface, he only has me as his child. He wants to nurture me into the most outstanding socialite, so that he can use me to climb up the social ladder. Naturally, I have the best upbringing. Jingwan's expression was indifferent. Obviously, she did not have a good impression of that father. Wanwan seems to know some things that people with better conditions should not know. Did something happen in her family later? Yes. Jingwan raised her head and sank into her memories with a hint of sadness. He betrayed my mother. He had an affair with another woman, and appeared arrogantly in front of my mother. However, my mother originally wanted to divorce him. In that place, it was normal for couples to divorce if they did not get along. After the divorce, both parties could remarry. However, that man was an official, so it was impossible for him to do that. After all, monogamy was the law. It was not easy for my mother to divorce him. After a long tug of war, when the results were about to be out, both of them met with an accident at the same time and died. Only my grandmother and I were left. Not long after that, it was revealed that he had colluded with the bandits. However, he was dead, so everything was over. After all, he would not be implicated, but his family property was seized. Those bandits seemed to have suffered losses because of him. After he died, those bandits naturally found me and my grandmother. I lived a wandering life with my grandmother for a period of time. My grandmother was a woman from a scholarly family and had an excellent upbringing. Because of her earnest teachings, I did not go astray. However, my grandmother's originally healthy body had already collapsed, and she passed away a few years after that. During that time, I lived a very bad life and was muddle-headed. Then one day, I seemed to have suddenly fainted. When I regained consciousness, I knew that the original me was most likely dead and reincarnated, but I seemed to have forgotten to drink Mengpo's soup. I still remember everything from my previous life. Jingwan lowered her head and looked at Li Hongyuan. Her eyes were slightly red. Wanwan, you have me now. Moreover, the Luo family is also your relatives. Most of them are good people. Li Hongyuan said softly. It was no wonder that she did not like concubines since she was young. She was also particularly disgusted by men who were fickle in relationships. She was particularly close to Madame Luo. And I know. In fact, my grandmother in my previous life has already passed away. I have nothing to worry about. My grandmother in my previous life and my grandmother now are quite similar in some ways. It is undeniable that in the beginning, I was close to my grandmother because of the transference of affection. After a long time, my feelings for her are also real. If you miss Madame Luo, you can always take the time to go back and visit her. Oh, you're suddenly so generous? Who was the one who pulled a long face and was unhappy because I stayed in the Luo family for a long time? Jingwan teased. The sadness in her heart dissipated a little. Li Hongyuan snorted coldly. How long can Madame Luo live? In any case, the one who will be by your side for the rest of your life will be me. Jingwan paused. Yuan, thank you. She lowered her head and kissed Li Hongyuan's lips. Just a word of thanks is enough? But other than this, I don't have anything else. After all, I'm yours. I've given you my whole life. These words could be said to have greatly pleased the living king of hell. What do you mean you don't have anything else? I'm not yours. The big Jin Qinhuang Fu isn't yours? Jin Qinhuang, whose sweet talk skill was maxed out, really pleased Jin Qinhuang Fei. Some feelings began to linger again. Jingwan decisively changed the topic. Since Yuan's fine brushwork is so good, why don't we cooperate on a painting? I'll paint you and you paint me, how about it? Painting a portrait of Li Hongyuan could be said to be the peak of Jingwan's fine brushwork. Especially the first portrait, the surreal style. In the future, it would be difficult to surpass that level. Why not? Li Hongyuan got up and pulled Jingwan's wrist, walking behind the table again. You first or me first? Why don't we do it together, one for each person? After each person finishes, the other person will fill in the other half. Let's see who's the final one is more harmonious and perfect. The idea is good. However, if Wan loses, don't cry. Li Hongyuan's slender and powerful fingers scratched the tip of Jingwan's nose. Jingwan lightly patted his hand away. I'm not a person who is jealous of talent. How can I cry? Besides, even if my painting skills are far inferior to yours, but this is not something that can be won by just relying on painting skills. After all, without discussing the layout in advance, any situation can happen. Thus, it is still unknown who will win and who will lose. Is that so? Then this husband will wait and see. Li Hongyuan smiled lightly, handsome and compelling. Jingwan moved her line of sight and curled her lips. Although she had long been accustomed to it, but when it suddenly happened occasionally, it was still unbearable. Li Hongyuan had never cared much about his appearance, but it felt good to be able to mesmerize his wife. Each person occupied half of the table, working separately. Perhaps in order to cooperate with Jingwan, Li Hongyuan deliberately slowed down his speed, and the paper was also smaller. Thus, in the end, it did not take long to finish half of the painting. In the end, they almost stopped at the same time. They looked at each other, and from their expressions, it could be seen that they were quite satisfied. When they saw each other's painting, they were slightly stunned. Then they looked up at each other and smiled. At this moment, it was really an incomparable tacit understanding. This was because both of their layouts were relatively conventional, and it was easy to add the other half. It was enough to show that they were considerate of each other, and did not deliberately think of ways to make things difficult for each other. More coincidentally, the layouts of the two paintings were very similar. In the end, when the paintings were completed, it could be said that it was the same person who painted two similar paintings. However, the other half of the painting should have taken longer than before. In fact, it was not so. It was just as smooth and confident. In this way, they spent half a day in the study. Later, when Nanny Gong came to tidy up the study, she finally calmed down. The princess and the prince did not really quarrel. Nanny Gong did not know how to paint, but she had the ability to appreciate paintings. This painting was obviously done by two people. Although the prince's fine brushwork was beyond her imagination, she did not find it strange. After all, she did not like the prince's style of doing things, but she did not deny that he was extraordinary in all aspects. After that, Mama Gong realized that her Wangfei's gaze towards her was a little strange. However, she did not try to find out the reason. She did what she was supposed to do. Her gaze did not change, and she strictly adhered to her professional ethics. Jingwan thought to herself, Nanny Gong has been specially trained and is a secret guard. Her composure is not comparable to ordinary people. I used to think that Nanny Gong's temperament was like this, but it turned out that it was not the case. There was a special training in it. Nanny Gong, let the people get ready. We'll go to the Luo family in the afternoon. After hearing what her husband said, even if it wouldn't happen right now, Jingwan still couldn't remain indifferent. It was as if she would not be at ease if she did not take a look. Yes, Your Highness. Nanny Gong replied and prepared to leave. Nanny Gong. Does Your Highness have any other orders? In Nanny Gong's impression, Jingwan was slightly hesitant when speaking. That is, you can slowly remove the makeup on your face. Nanny Gong was actually much younger than her face showed, and the shape of her face was also different. It was fine if she did not know before, but now that she knew, there was no reason for her to continue acting like this. Gong Mama paused and immediately reacted. She knew that the princess consort already knew some things. This might be the reason why the prince and the princess consort had argued before. It was obvious that no one liked having a spy around them years ago. However, the prince had still managed to appease the princess consort in the end. Yes, Nanny Gong actually looked similar to the previous female nurse. Under the subtle influence of the female nurse, her current face was actually closer to her original appearance. However, the age difference was there. If she suddenly completely removed the makeup, in the eyes of outsiders, it would definitely be a different person. Therefore, the removal of the makeup would not be done overnight. It would take at least a year and a half. It was not the New Year's Day, and it was not something that happened in the Luo family, but Jin Qinhuang brought Jin Qinhuang Fei to the Luo family. The Luo family naturally did not understand and worried that something might have happened. With such emotions, old Madame Luo hurriedly led the Luo family out to greet them. Seeing the husband and wife coming down from the carriage without any haze on their faces, old Madame Luo breathed a sigh of relief. However, her heart was not completely at ease, because she knew that this granddaughter of hers really hid things in her heart, and could not be easily seen. After the necessary formalities were completed, the group entered the Luo Fu. Before stepping into the inner courtyard, the men and women walked separately. Old Madame Luo could not bear it anymore and hurriedly asked the doubts in her heart. Jingwan understood in her heart that she suddenly came back for no reason and scared her grandmother. Jingwan held her arm and hurriedly comforted her. "Grandmother, don't worry. I just missed you, so I came back to take a look. It's really nothing." Old Madame Luo tilted her head to look at her. After looking at her for a long time, it seemed that there was really nothing wrong. Only then was she completely relieved. "You are a Qinhuang Fei, an imperial daughter-in-law. How can you run to your maternal home for no reason?" "Grandmother, are you disliking me and don't want to see me?" Jingwan pretended to be wronged. "What nonsense are you saying?" Old Madame Luo patted her hand. "If it's up to me, I would naturally want you to be in front of me every day. But the rules of the imperial family are very big. If there's a little carelessness, it may cause trouble. Compared to being able to see you, grandmother naturally hopes that you can be well." "Grandmother is thinking too much. It's not like you don't know what kind of person our family's Wang Ye is. As long as he agrees, nothing will happen. Moreover, because of the Bai family's matter, the emperor is in the wrong. As long as it's not too excessive, the emperor will not get involved. Moreover, the war in the northwest is in full swing. The emperor has no time to care about other things. Thus, even if other people have opinions, they will also hold it in. It's just that I'm from the Luo family. Other people don't dare to say anything about Wang Ye and me. I'm only afraid that they will say that there is a problem with the Luo family's upbringing. It's just a few words of gossip, there's no need to care about it. The person who said this is their own heart that is sour. However, don't rely on Jin Qinhuang's favoritism to do whatever you want. Grandmother's words are wrong. It's because I have something to rely on that I should take advantage of the opportunity to do more things that I want to do." Preposterous reasoning. If you continue like this, be careful that Wang Ye will be tired of you one day. In the end, this was what old Madame Luo was most worried about. "It won't happen. Wang Ye and I are very good. Moreover, it will change. No matter how careful we are, it will change. If it doesn't change, it will always be tolerant. All right. With this mouth of yours, there aren't many people who can out-talk you. As long as you feel that there's no problem, then do as you please." Jingwan beamed and nodded with a little pride. Old Madame Luo sighed in her heart. This granddaughter, not only was she spoiled by Jin Qinhuang, her temperament was also becoming more and more exposed, and her temper was also rising. This good, very good. It must be said that Jingwan's change was not only felt by old Madame Luo. Old Madame Luo wanted to talk to Jingwan like before, and then send her to talk to the other young people. Jingwan was not sent away this time. "If grandmother's spirit is good, we will stay here and disturb you." Old Madame Luo had some doubts in her heart, but she couldn't think of a reason. "All right, as long as you don't dislike this old woman for being stuffy." This time, don't mention Jingwan. The other people also hurriedly said no, and spoke in a joking manner. The atmosphere was harmonious. Jingwan's words were actually less than before, but the others didn't notice. At this moment, Jingwan was really grateful to her own husband. The grudge in her heart towards the person he first fell in love with, who was not the present her, was also dissipating little by little. He remembered all the hardships and tribulations, all the cruelty and darkness, and now he was changing a lot of things with his own strength. If everything was on the original track, then under this roof, There wouldn't be the laughter now. He said that in his previous life, because of her tragic death, grandmother cried until she went blind. Jingwan was very clear in her heart that it wasn't as simple as crying until she went blind. Her previous life in Qianfu basically didn't change. It was enough to see that grandmother's body was also in poor health. That kind of grief, it was possible that her life would end in the Yellow Springs. There were also the other people present. Although he wasn't very clear about the others, sister-in-law Sun Yijia, who entered Prince Kang's mansion, didn't escape the tragic fate of a beautiful woman. Now, although her face was disfigured, she was happy and satisfied. Her daughter was more than 1 year old, and the little girl especially picked the good-looking parts of her parents to grow. She was a great beauty, and when she grew up, she might become a femme fatale. Sun Yijia was already preparing to have a second child. And maybe she was already pregnant. When one didn't know, one would do what one should do. But when one knew, even if it didn't happen at the moment, one couldn't be indifferent. Jingwan herself couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. She also understood why her own husband was still unable to forget. Jingwan sat upright and didn't intend to leave. Li Hongyuan also didn't call anyone to urge her, and the others couldn't drive her away. Therefore, until the several men of the Luo family went to the yamen, the first reaction of Luo Peishan and the others was, "What happened?" To them, Li Hongyuan wasn't in the mood to kindly explain. It wasn't until they ate dinner, sat down and rushed before the curfew, that Jingwan and Li Hongyuan returned to Jinqin Fu. Luo Shangshu expressed that he was a bit confused, and asked his old wife, "Why did third girl come back with Wang Ye?" Wangwan said that she missed us. Since she was idle, she came back to sit. Is there really nothing? If there was nothing, could she wait until he went to the yamen? But if there was something, why did she leave without saying a word? Old Madame Luo frowned. To be honest, she wasn't very sure. Her own granddaughter didn't seem to be any different, but she did feel that there was something strange that couldn't be said. Luo Shangshu saw this. Forget it, Jin Qinhuang is a man with a clear mind. If something really happened, he would certainly have a sense of propriety. Third girl isn't someone who would be at a loss when something happens. The husband and wife both pressed this matter down and didn't mention it. They would wait for a few more days. If it really was a big matter, there wouldn't be no movement at all. Perhaps it really was nothing. No one stipulated that when a married daughter came back with her husband, they must leave at a certain time. On the carriage back to the Wangfu, Jingwan quietly leaned in Li Hongyuan's arms. "What's wrong? You came back to take a look and your mood is down?" "No, it's just that I can't walk out for a while. It will be fine after a few days. That's why I say, you women are like this. That heart, it's like glass, very easily broken." "That's right, you men's hearts are so hard that even a boulder can't compare." Jingwan didn't even think as she lightly retorted. Li Hongyuan held her hand and put it on his chest. "Feel it, is it hard?" Jingwan pinched twice but didn't pinch. His muscles were really not much different from a boulder. "Isn't it just a boulder?" Jingwan was unconvinced and patted twice. Li Hongyuan grabbed her hand. "Don't tease me casually. I didn't do you in the study this morning. Do you want this husband to do you now?" Jingwan felt a certain someone's body had a reaction and lightly spat at him. "Pervert." "That's right, your husband is a pervert, and he especially likes you." Jingwan didn't come out of his arms. In fact, she also needed to do something to divert attention. She approached his neck and stuck out her pink tongue to lick it. She smiled and said, "This is teasing. Hey, don't move." Jingwan held his hand. "Wait until we go back." Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes a little dangerously. "On purpose?" Jingwan's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Li Hongyuan gently rubbed her flexible waist. "Tell me, how many days do you plan to not get out of bed? If you really make me unable to get out of bed, you will suffer from kidney deficiency." Jingwan whispered in his ear, her breath smelling like orchids. She even mischievously licked his earlobe. The strange feeling was too obvious. Li Hongyuan tilted his head slightly and said, "Even if you don't get off the bed, it doesn't mean that we have to continue to make love. Let's have a good time, and then continue after a few hours. For example, we'll start when we go back. When you can't move anymore, We'll rest and continue tomorrow morning. Wanwan, tell me, if we do this repeatedly, how long can your husband last, and how long can you last? Jingwan's heart trembled at the end of his low and hoarse voice. When he teased her, he only needed to lower his voice. But what about her? This was the gap between them. However, now was not the time to talk about this. Thinking about the meaning of his words, Jingwan couldn't help but soften her waist by 9 points. She secretly wiped away her sad tears. Sure enough, she was still looking for trouble. Yuan, do you think I didn't say anything? No, my ability is questioned by my own wife. No matter what, I have to prove it properly. Yuan, I was wrong really. Jingwan wanted to cry but had no tears. Well, this can wait a few days. Li Hongyuan indicated that he would listen to his wife now. He didn't make too big of a movement, just stroking and picking slowly. That feeling of being neither up nor down was the most torturous. Jingwan bit Li Hongyuan's clothes on his shoulder, and her eyes were forced to cry. So even if her physique was good and she recovered quickly, she shouldn't doubt her own man. That would be courting death. After all, in this aspect, most women were actually at a disadvantage. Moreover, in the face of the king of hell, she probably couldn't be strong. She wanted to be a queen, but she didn't know how it would arouse his interest. Li Hongyuan knew that his wife was thin-skinned. In order not to make a sound, she endured a lot of pain. Only when the punishment was almost done, did he show mercy and lift her chin, swallowing all the moans that came out of her mouth. That night, naturally, it was a charming and gentle spring scenery. The king of hell did what he said, and really made Jingwan unable to move a finger. Finally, when they were taking a bath, Li Hongyuan dissolved the contraceptive pill in the water as usual. After he dissolved it, Jingwan grabbed his hand. You said that in your previous life, we had a child? You were poisoned with the sterilization powder. That's an extremely low probability. You didn't encounter it with your wife, but with me? Jingwan's mood was complicated, and she felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. It has nothing to do with us now. Wanwan, you don't have to think so much. Li Hongyuan expressed that he still didn't like the son. Can you tell me about it? Jingwan couldn't resist the child she didn't know at all. She was especially curious. If she didn't know that someone didn't welcome the child, she wouldn't have waited until now to ask. Li Hongyuan didn't know what to think, but he suddenly smiled with a bit of pride. Wanwan is right. We were husband and wife for one night, but you got pregnant. It can be seen that even if you married someone else, you should have the deepest bond with me. Jingwan was angry. She was talking about this? Don't try to change the topic. How is the child? Li Hongyuan's expression turned cold. I was the last to find out about the child. You were on the run the entire time you were pregnant with him. You were so skinny that you looked like a bag of bones, but the child was not bad. Do you know how the child was born? According to the last guard left by Fu Yenting, you cut it yourself. Your physical condition didn't allow him to be born smoothly. If you didn't ask me to take good care of him, I would have strangled him to death. I wasn't clear-headed at that time, so I didn't know the specific situation of his birth until later. Otherwise, he would have died. He and I were cut open and taken out of the mother's belly. The meaning is completely different. Yuan. Jingwan didn't know that she would deeply hurt him. Wanwan, you have to know that the child, even if I gave him the best everything and the best education, I still didn't like him. Fortunately, he was still satisfactory and barely qualified to be your son. Otherwise, I would never recognize him. I would barely keep his life and not leave the throne to him. Even if he was my only son. The Jiangshang that I conquered didn't need an heir. I could easily destroy it. Therefore, the child could sit on the throne. First, he was the son of Luo Jingwan. Second, he was qualified to be Luo Jingwan's son. It had nothing to do with him being the only heir of Li Hongyuan. This was probably something that no one thought of. If they knew, those ministers didn't know how many hairs they would pull out. Even if they had to stuff a duck, they would probably let the little prince pass. Even if Li Hongyuan gave Jingwan too much stimulation, Jingwan was still shocked, speechless. If it's a girl? Jingwan murmured. If she passes, she will be the empress. Li Hongyuan said without hesitation. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1255405 HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com mobile edition. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.